After witnessing all of Ludger's memories, Casey seemed to collapse. She sat motionless in the darkness, quietly shedding tears of both despair and self-reproach. Just then, Betty entered, voice drowsy. "You're still awake? Casey, if you stay up this late, you'll be tired tomorrow." A brilliant detective once praised as a national hero, to now felt like a fool for still believing in the one who had deceived him, and that person had even been the one to save the nation. But at that moment, Betty, the innocent girl who had always been by her side, appeared. She gently placed a hand on Casey's head and said warmly, "I prefer seeing you lively rather than like this exhausted." That instant made Casey realize she was not alone, and even if the world fell apart, there were still people she had saved and who had trusted her. 3 days later, at Serin Academy, Ludger, now head of planning, shocked the whole school by launching an internal investigation. "I've reviewed all the records and found many serious violations," he declared before the faculty, calm yet imposing. Hugo, head of the budget department, trembled and begged, but Ludger replied coldly, "When it rains, those who get wet know it best." The metaphor cut like a knife, and the room fell silent. Everyone understood that the purge had truly begun. The remark made Hugo, the one chiefly responsible, break out in a cold sweat. Ludger was pressuring him to name his accomplices, otherwise everything would be exposed. He tapped lightly on the file stack and warned, "I'll give you a chance." Ludger replied calmly, eyes as cold as ice, "As long as I have the evidence, no one will escape, but if you cooperate, the punishment will be lighter. Choose wisely." Hugo immediately understood that Ludger wanted him to point out his accomplices in exchange for leniency. The atmosphere froze. Everyone trembled. They realized Ludger was not only investigating but also carrying out a purge. Faced with that cold stare, Hugo could only grit his teeth, angry and powerless. After the tense purge session, Ludger leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I'm exhausted. At least Hugo's case is settled." Assistant Sedina stepped forward, voice gentle. "Are you referring to Professor Hugo?" Ludger nodded. "Yes, when he's demoted, things will calm down. The principal will certainly be pleased." He glanced at the pile of files before him and frowned. "But there's still a mountain of work to handle," Sedina reminded him softly. "And the upcoming field trip, remember?" Ludger paused briefly. "Ah, that trip." He leaned back and explained briefly. "Serin Academy will cooperate with the Royal Magic Society and the Imperial School to hold an academic exchange in the capital, Linderbrunn." Sedina brightened. "The capital, that sounds wonderful. This trip will be a great opportunity." Ludger gave a faint smile. "Indeed. As I said, the relic is in Linderbrunn. I'll be the supervising teacher on this trip, and it's the perfect chance to retrieve it." Sedina responded immediately, voice full of determination. "Understood. I'll prepare everything promptly and support you as much as I can." Ludger only nodded, voice dropping slightly. "Good. After all, the supervisory role is just about selecting the right advisors." As Ludger was about to finish his work, Casey suddenly entered the office and calmly greeted, "Long time no see, Professor Ludger Cherish." He frowned slightly and dismissed his assistant, then sighed. "You still have the habit of barging in without knocking, don't you?" Casey shrugged. "It's nothing. It's just the two of us." The conversation quickly turned serious when she asked bluntly, "Are you really confronting the Black Dawn Society?" Ludger opened a drawer and pulled out a file. "You've probably heard that our Valtanung branch disappeared, haven't you?" Ludger did not mince words, and handed her the confidential file on the organization. Casey was astonished to realize it was real evidence. She whispered, "Thank you." He looked briefly embarrassed. Casey seemed different from before, but she immediately turned cold. "Don't think I owe you. I'm acting because I believe the Black Dawn is truly dangerous." Before leaving, Casey suddenly said, "Oh, I heard there's an upcoming field trip. I'd like to apply to be an advisor." Ludger remained as cold as ever and flatly refused Casey's request to join the field trip. But the crafty girl wouldn't let it go easily. With a flick of her hand, the sheet with the roster on the table tore open. Casey put on an innocent smile, forcing Ludger, helplessly, to agree to add her name. Before she left, he warned in a cold voice, "The Black Dawn has started watching you, Casey Selmore." She merely smiled confidently. "You think I'm that easy to take down?" and walked away, leaving Ludger to sigh softly. She really hasn't changed at all. A few weeks later, Serin Academy buzzed with preparations for the field trip to the capital, where the third exam would also take place. Amid the excitement, Leo suddenly went pale and used fatigue as an excuse to leave. He waved, trying to keep his voice steady. "Sorry, I suddenly feel unwell. I think I'll go rest." The group halted, surprised to see Leo leave abruptly, despite being the one who had invited everyone to the library. Tessie worriedly asked questions, while Aiden thought Leo might be sick and offered to stay and bring him medicine. Back in his room, Leo activated the magical watch and heard a voice from a mysterious organization make contact. The voice announced, "The Serin delegation is about to depart for the capital. The moment of revolution approaches." They asked Leo to confirm where the group would lodge, preparing for the Liberation Army's plan. Leo was outraged when he realized they planned to attack students and shouted, "Don't tell me you intend to lay a hand on the students?" The voice replied coldly, calling it a necessary sacrifice for an equal world. Leo objected because many civilians would be involved, but the other party threatened, "Remember who is taking care of your family." Leo trembled with rage, growled softly, "Bastards," then was forced to yield, choking out, "Fine." Outside the door, Aiden, who had intended to knock, overheard everything and stood frozen in stunned silence. Ludger froze, his body rigid as the past crashed over him like a cold wave. It was a quiet night of a full moon. Back then, he was just a boy, exhausted and lying motionless at the bottom of an icy well. He was still alive, but hope quickly faded when he realized no one was coming to save him. It was only one episode in a 7-year ordeal of relentless pursuit. And then, that woman appeared. Her voice was cold as ice, her gaze distant and authoritative, echoing down from the mouth of the well. In that moment, Ludger's fate was sealed. From then on, the bond between master and disciple was engraved into them both. Back in the alley, Ludger stood between Serin and the intruder. He took a deep breath and greeted, "Long time no see, master." Grandeur, her eyes blazing red like fire, answered with a chilling smile, "Indeed. Exactly how long has it been? You don't seem to have changed much since I fell asleep." Her words were light, but carried layer upon layer of weight. Selena was stunned when she realized the girl before her, who seemed only a young maiden, was actually the one who had taught Ludger. Grandeur seemed unconcerned. 7 years. Incredible. "You used my blood, didn't you?" The air immediately stiffened. Ludger did not deny it, for he knew every lie was useless before his master. "Not only did you secretly draw my blood while I slept, but you also dared to use it recklessly." "How bold," Ludger replied calmly. "Is that why you're angry?" But Grandeur did not seem angry, at least not outwardly. She said with an unnerving nonchalance, "My blood is the greatest magical elixir in the world. It is only natural that others would crave it. I would not be angry at my disciple over something so trivial." Still, the atmosphere tightened like a drawn string. Grandeur stared straight at Ludger, the red in her eyes flashed. "But I need to confirm one thing. Where did you use it?" The question left Ludger tense and silent, while Selena watched, terribly worried. Grandeur moved like an apparition, appearing beside Selena in the blink of an eye. No violence was needed. A single look from Grandeur was enough to freeze the air. A pressure of magical energy radiated from her, making Selena tremble, her heart pounding as if being squeezed. What is this, my disciple?" Her voice echoed, cold and sharp as a knife. Body and soul separated, and yet so natural. How skillful. Grandeur regarded Selena with keen interest, as if examining a rare specimen. Selena could not stand. Before she could react, whoosh, Ludger stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. A gentle stream of magic flowed to her, and Selena blacked out in his embrace. "What are you doing, my disciple?" Grandeur raised an eyebrow, half reproachful, half curious. "Protecting a colleague," Ludger answered, bracing Selena against the wall. "If anything happens to her, things will get complicated." "A colleague?" Very well." Grandeur propped her chin on her hand, her gaze still fixed on Selena. "It's the first time I've seen a pseudo-spirit disguised as a human. Truly fascinating. Moreover, this energy shows she has made a pact with a dark spirit." She smirked and said, "The appearance may be identical, but the essence cannot be changed. No matter how perfect the transformation, it is ultimately futile. But anyway, back to the main point. You must have a legitimate reason to use my blood, yes?" When Ludger admitted he had used it to seal Quasimodo, a demon born of negative emotions, Grandeur burst into laughter, tinged with contempt. "How dare you use my blood on such a lowly creature?" Her gaze flashed fiercely. "Are you insulting me?" Ludger straightened and faced Grandeur's fury calmly. "I did not mean that. It's just, I am not yet worthy." His words made Grandeur pause for a moment, then a crooked smile formed at the corner of her mouth. "If you put it that way, it's simple. Have you prepared to pay the price for my blood?" When Ludger asked, "What must I do?" she laughed mockingly. "I would have forgiven you if you'd begged me." But Ludger knew she would not let it go so easily. Grandeur smiled, realizing Ludger's power had far surpassed what it once was, which only made her crave the fight more. Ludger understood as well that combat was unavoidable. He bought some time to make preparations and would return soon. 30 minutes later, at the Verdi mansion, Professor Selena slept soundly on the sofa while Hans watched her worriedly. "Damn it. He disappeared the moment I looked away," leaving me to watch her. Violetta gently pulled a blanket over her and whispered, "Do you think something serious happened?" Hans sighed. "With him, she'll probably be fine." The outskirts forest of Redderbelka. A blaze of light exploded, tearing the space apart. Ludger unleashed a massive magical flame that created a powerful shockwave, enveloping Grandeur. Ludger froze, magical energy surging as he looked up. From within the flames, a crimson hand pierced through. Ludger stood stunned, sensing a tremendous power swelling around him. A cold premonition crawled down his spine. She was summoning Sephiroth's fifth sphere, Gebura. Grandeur stepped out of the giant vortex of fire, a mad smile blooming. "Ha ha ha, wonderful. You can recreate an ancient miracle? Excellent, my pet. Show me more." Ludger drew his sword, his breath growing heavy, his cold gaze focused. He had expected his master to break the previous move, but seeing it in person still stunned him. Without hesitation, he raised his hand, combining the two elements. Streams of fire and icy blue energy burst forth, ripping the air apart. From the light, Grandeur appeared, her voice full of scorn. "Oh, the magic design I once taught you. Quick, but useless. You can't wound me." She had read his intention. Ludger remained silent, only tightening his grip on the sword. That strike was not meant to kill, but to bait. The moment Grandeur smiled, the space around her began to warp, the light bending violently. She raised a hand to shield her eyes, astonished. He modified the magic to traverse space. A cold flash burst. Ludger appeared directly before her and swung his sword hard. The slash was so fast, the eye couldn't follow. Grandair's throat was cut across, blood spurted, and then dissolved into the air. He landed on the ground, gasping, sweat beading. Not enough yet. That cut wasn't enough to take her down. In response, a terrifying black magical force hurtled downward, the explosion hurling Ludger far away. He skidded across the ground, slammed into a boulder, blood spilling from his mouth. From the midst of white smoke, Grandeur reappeared, the black magical stream above her beginning to crystallize. Grandeur hovered in midair. As the magic quickly condensed into form, she said indifferently, "What are you whining about? You did block quite well." Her face gradually came into view. She offered praise, but it seemed his skill was still far inferior. Before he could react, Grandeur raised her black umbrella high. A surge of dark mana erupted violently, shrouding the entire sky. Ludger froze. That magic was bloodcraft, irregular sorcery, a fusion of mana and blood, producing destructive power. Ordinary people would die from losing too much blood, but a vampire like his master, one who can control blood, is not bound by those limits. Not only that, she is the highest rank among vampires, a pure blood demon. Grandeur hovered as her umbrella unleashed a storm of darkness at breakneck speed. He was astonished. This rain of attacks couldn't be dodged or blocked. It was beyond his capability. So, instead of dodging, he stood firm at the center of the magical storm. The earth and rocks around him exploded. She uses darkness as a medium to warp space? A technique demanding colossal mana. Only Grandeur could pull that off. Suddenly, the space before them twisted into a blazing red vortex. "Wait, where did she go?" From behind, a cold voice rang out. "Is this what you wanted to show me? Space transcending magic." Aiden froze, suspicion rising in his chest. But because he stood too far away, he couldn't hear the whole conversation clearly. He tried to recall the key words. Revolutionary liberation. Could Leo be connected to the Liberation Army? Just as the atmosphere seemed to settle, Leo suddenly paused. His eyes widened in surprise as if he'd discovered something. Aiden reflexively flinched to the side. He hurried out of the room and threw open the door, checking the hallway. But the surroundings were completely empty. Thinking he'd imagined it, Leo sighed and turned back. He had no idea that Aiden was hiding right behind the door, his heart pounding. Aiden tried to calm himself, telling himself not to suspect his friend over a vague phone call. Still, doubt had been planted in his mind. The next scene takes viewers to the Serin lecture hall, where a professor is lecturing about the tiers of magic. He paused and asked, "Why are 5th rank mages called Amamnuki?" A quick student answered that it was because he was the first to reach that rank. But the professor only smiled and corrected him. Amamnuki wasn't the first person, but the one who re-established the entire 5th rank magic system, and the title was bestowed in his honor. The class buzzed with questions about higher ranks. Now, who knows which person the 7th rank is named after? The student Lin immediately raised her hand. Impera. She tilted her head in puzzlement. But wasn't that the first mage to reach 7th rank? That seems different from what you just taught. The professor laughed. Exactly. A sharp question. He revealed that the 7th rank is nearly impossible to replicate, and very few attain it. A student asked curiously about 8th rank mages, wondering if they too were named after the first person to reach that rank. But even the professor wasn't certain. This knowledge isn't written in books but passed down orally. The name for the 8th rank is Grandeur, a name carrying the ancient sense of the impossible. To this day, no one has reached that threshold of power. But he left them with a chilling remark. If one day an 8th rank mage truly appears, perhaps they will redefine that name. Back in Ludger's office, where the atmosphere was heavy unlike the lecture hall, after handling urgent matters, he and Sedina began discussing the upcoming field trip, a secret mission to search for a holy relic. He gazed out thoughtfully. Students of Serin rarely leave campus. Black Dawn surely won't pass up this opportunity. He turned to ask about Black Dawn, but according to Sedina's report, the Black Dawn organization had suddenly stood down, showing no activity, no orders. Ludger grew suspicious. This made him even more on guard. When Ludger asked Sedina why the information was so murky, she hesitated and revealed, "All news must pass through Nikolai, Black Dawn's rank 1. If he doesn't want it known, no one will know what's happening." Ludger quickly realized Nikolai had deliberately blocked the entire internal information flow. His gaze turned cold. If Nikolai was acting on his own, it meant there was a covert plot within Black Dawn. He left the office calmly, but resolved to verify things himself. An hour later, at UN's secret base, Owen Hans jumped when Ludger entered. "Huh? Boss? You came without warning." The conversation between Ludger and Hans revealed a frightening detail. He glanced at a black cage in the corner of the room, inside which sat a crow. "You keep a crow?" Hans explained that his ability to control creatures had suddenly surged, extending from tiny rats to crows. He himself couldn't understand why that ability had developed so terrifyingly fast. Ludger pondered, then proposed a hypothesis that stunned Hans. The essence of the Gvaden monster may have merged into his body. Hans froze, his face going pale. The Gvaden monster? If that energy awakens, he could lose control and be consumed by bestial instincts. Hearing that, Hans's heart raced, a vague sense of unease rising within him. However, rather than forbidding it, Ludger advised Hans to learn to control and harness that power, particularly using the flock of crows to scout the palace, an important step in the search for the holy relic. Hans was delighted. "Oh, right. No one would suspect a bird." Ludger agreed. "Exactly. And, if combined with Sedina, locating the holy relic will be much easier." But stealing it seemed impractical. The problem was that the holy relic was kept in the palace, protected by a series of wards. So Ludger had to put that plan aside to find another way. He leaned back in his chair, sighing tiredly. "Well, I don't have the energy to think anymore. I've been working all day." Hans suggested they go out to blow off steam, and so the two went out to have fun. After busy days, Hans invited Ludger to stop by the House of Verdi, the fashionable store beloved by both nobility and mages. But when Hans suddenly left to meet Violetta, Ludger decided to stay and pick out a new outfit. Unexpectedly, fate arranged an unforeseen encounter for him. From behind, a cheerful voice rang out. "Oh my, Professor Ludger?" The person who appeared was Professor Selina, a friendly colleague known for her enthusiasm. She beamed and ran over to greet him. After a few words, she suddenly took Ludger's hand mysteriously. "I have something I want to show you, but it must be very secret." She led him into a quiet alley. Then excitedly she summoned a small black familiar, a rare shadow sprite she had just contracted. "You're the first person I've shown it to," she said, smiling proudly. But only a moment later, the familiar suddenly lunged straight at Ludger, forcing him to block it quickly. Selina panicked and apologized, unaware that her reaction had made Ludger briefly suspicious. Strange. Shadow sprites are usually wary of humans. Why did it react to me like that? He suddenly asked its name. She flashed a radiant smile and answered, "Its name is Esmeralda." The moment Ludger repeated that name, the smile on his face vanished. At that instant, his expression changed violently. The familiar suddenly dispersed into thin air, leaving Selina stunned. Why? Was Esmeralda dispelled? Ludger's face turned cold, his voice low and warning. "Professor Selina, from now on please say nothing, no matter what happens." As those words echoed, a thick black aura emanated from behind him, engulfing the entire alley. Selina turned around, her face utterly shocked and stunned. From within the darkness, the soft sound of leather shoes tapped, followed by the appearance of a long-haired woman wearing a wide-brimmed hat, her red eyes gleaming with triumph. She smiled, her voice light yet icy. "Long time no see, my apprentice." A sudden icy hand clamped around Ludger's neck from behind. Everything happened too fast. Only a sharp pain shot straight to his head. He growled, struggling within that deadly grip. Grandier's blazing red eyes flashed in the dark, her gaze both amused and challenging. A faint smile touched her lips as she spoke in a low voice into Ludger's ear. Now then, how do you intend to get out of this? Don't tell me this is all you've got. A chilling crack echoed as Ludger's neck felt like it would shatter under that terrible squeeze. But in that hair-raising moment, his body vanished. An illusion? Grandeur paused, surprise flickering in her eyes. Right behind her, Ludger appeared, hands clasped. A brilliant golden aura exploded, making the air tremble violently. Earth, piercing seal. Magic surged outward, focusing straight at Grandeur. That sacred, pure energy pressed upon the space like a weight, completely suppressing her dark power. Grandeur was crushed, collapsing and barely able to move. Even she admitted, this energy, is it holy power? A rare note of astonishment from one who once stood atop might. Ludger held the seal steady, a hand sign pressed to the ground in a meditative posture like an enlightened figure beneath an olive tree. He raised his voice. This is a power against evil. So, is that enough? It seemed Ludger had gained the upper hand, but Grandeur, with the demon within her, turned her head as a wave of dark magic rose. Her voice was hoarse, hissing through clenched teeth. You think this petty thing is enough? An extreme surge of dark energy burst forth, creating a blazing red storm that tore through the holy light. Ludger was thrown back, his body slamming into the ground. Grandeur lunged like a phantom, pressing one hand hard onto his shoulder. Her smile turned feral, fangs beginning to show as her voice dripped with madness. Not enough. I want to see your full power. The more she struck, the more she laughed, half like a master testing a pupil, half like a bloodthirsty lunatic seeking release. Finally, when the smile died, she uttered hoarsely, "Please, end me." Ludger opened his eyes and looked at the woman who had just choked him a few seconds before. Then he choked out two words that silenced the space. "That's enough, mother." Grandeur froze, her lips trembling, speechless. A rare reaction from someone always proud and cold. Those words not only cut the battle short but dispelled all the surrounding dark magic. Instantly, the blood-red sky vanished, returning the scene to a peaceful blue. She then rose, brushed dust off her dress, trying to regain her usual composure. Half teasing, half reproachful, she said, "You wicked brat. You only call me that when it's truly necessary, right?" Ludger, panting but calm, replied, "Yes, it's the only way to make my master stop." Their dialogue shifted from tension to layered implication. Grandeur realized Ludger hadn't used his full power, while Ludger countered that she hadn't either. Between them, whether teacher and student or enemies, there remained an ineffable understanding. The scene recalled that day the first time he met her. She easily recognized him as someone from the accursed Holy Kingdom, and moreover one of its core figures. Back then, Ludger was just a boy abandoned at the bottom of a well, and Grandeur, bearing demonic blood, chose to save him. She said coldly but decisively, "I will raise you, child. I'll feed you, give you a place to sleep, and make you stronger. But when you are strong enough, you must be the one to end my life." She gently reached out to support him. A terrifying promise, yet it became the beginning of their deepest bond between a cursed one and a mother not related by blood. He took her hand, and with it grasped the hope of survival. Now he held that hand again, his voice trembling slightly. "Let's return to the city. I want to introduce you to the team, as family." A heavy thought echoed in Ludger's mind. She is like my mother. How could I possibly be the one to end her life? The battle ended, leaving a massive crater in the ground as clear evidence of the destruction, causing an uproar among onlookers. A few hours later, at the UNON's secret base, Ludger introduced Grandeur to his comrades. "This is my master. She'll be staying here for a while. Make yourselves at ease and just take good care of her." Grandeur watched everyone with curious eyes, occasionally teasing UNON members with bursts of power, forcing Ludger to reprimand her. Everyone in the base was stunned by her latent strength. Alex, unable to hide his astonishment, stammered, "So she is our leader's master." Meanwhile, Pantos the white-haired beastman remained calm but admitted, "I can't fathom the limits of her power." Ludger turned to Hans, who was hiding behind Pantos, asking about Celine's condition. He decided to leave and escort her back, asking his master not to give his teammates a hard time, while Grandeur complained about being left behind. Hans took the opportunity to try to follow, but Grandeur immediately refused. The stage instantly belonged to Grandeur, the unpredictable and powerful master. Ignoring warnings, she declared she'd use the time while her disciple was away to get acquainted with everyone. UNON members swallowed in fear. Only Pantos remained unshaken, instead brimming with fighting spirit and anticipation. At the same time, in the forest near Retterbelka, the aftermath of the brutal battle was evident, frightening local knights and soldiers. A soldier reported in detail, "The sky outside the city turned red, And then there was a deafening explosion that shook the ground. The captain observed, trying to analyze but still felt it odd to make a judgment. A soldier speculated. Perhaps it was a battle between two very powerful mages. The captain frowned, wondering, what kind of mages would fight secretly in a place like this? Moreover, could this city really host two mages capable of causing such catastrophic destruction? If they were level 6 mages or above, it would make sense. But level 6 mages are rare, and for two of them to clash in a place like this, the likelihood is almost zero. Just as they were at an impasse, the unexpected arrival of Lumines Knights shattered all assumptions. Everyone recognized them as Knights of Lumines. But what were they doing here? Instead of seeking information, they brought shocking news. These traces belong to the creature the church has been hunting, the last vampire left in this world. In a rain-soaked alley in Retterbelka, Selena awkwardly looked at Ludger, apologizing remorsefully for having fainted. Ludger only smiled to reassure her, then watched her figure disappear into the gray rain. But immediately, the atmosphere grew tense. Ludger sensed someone watching him. He lowered his voice and ordered sternly, "Stop following me. Show yourself." A figure emerged from the rain, cloaked in a mysterious robe. She introduced herself as Bishop Fredin of the Lumines Church. Ludger, impatient, stared directly, suspicious. What was her purpose? Fredin did not hesitate, sensing the latent divine power within him, evidence that Ludger had been blessed with a source of holy power, and implying she wanted him to join the church. But Ludger immediately refused. His guarded attitude made Bishop Fredin slightly waver. In the end, he relented, leaving only a warning about the strange incidents recently in Retterbelka, the revival of the Monster King and the bizarre red flower. As he departed, the bishop prayed for Ludger, leaving him with heavy thoughts. His holy power had been perceived, that a stranger could sense his latent power, something no one had noticed before. His recent frequent use of holy power had likely made it more detectable, and perhaps it was time to use the sealing technique. Back at the base, Ludger witnessed chaos, his comrades exhausted, some in tears the result of a meeting with Master Grander. Calm as she was, Grander couldn't hide her impression at Ludger's ability to gather such diverse people. He modestly explained it was by chance, meeting them during his travels around the world. Grander began analyzing each one, the rogue skilled with a blade, the large beastmen both anxious and full of fighting spirit. Ludger thought to himself that this was an observation about Pantos, who always seeks strong opponents to unleash his strength, even having once challenged the master at their first meeting. What particularly caught Grander's attention was the slightly aged face, the one who is sometimes man, sometimes beast harboring and as yet unawakened power. She praised Ludger for choosing such unique people, teasing him about how he picked them up. Then the atmosphere grew tense. Grander said sternly, "So what do you intend to do with these people?" Ludger closed his eyes slightly, promising he would explain one day when the time came, and hesitantly asked his master to help adjust the sealing technique. The conversation between Ludger and Grander revealed a major worry. A luminous cleric had sensed his power, indicating the sealing magic had weakened. Ludger went to the table, rummaged through documents, and said grimly, "They noticed your presence in the recent battle. They will investigate sooner or later." Grander snorted coldly, unapologetic. "Humph. They think we hide because we're afraid?" She took the book Ludger handed her and asked seriously, "So, should we reinforce the sealing technique?" Grander flipped through the book and nodded slightly. "This isn't hard to do. It just requires some time and effort. I only need to strengthen what already exists. However, no matter how much the seal is reinforced, if you continue to use that power, eventually the seal will reach its limit." Ludger nodded, thoughtful. "I'm aware of that too." Grander closed her eyes and asserted, "No, you don't truly understand." She returned the book. "When the seal reaches its limit, it will no longer be your problem alone. Don't forget the promise in that hole that day." Ludger gripped the book tightly, his voice resolute. "Yes, master, I always remember that promise." Grander gave a faint smile. "Even so, today you didn't fight me with the intention of killing me." He looked down at the book, pondering. "As master said, this is only a temporary measure. If I keep using the power of God, the seal will weaken again. But considering the opponents I'll have to face in the future, I cannot completely rule out using that power." He understood that if he continued, it would only be a matter of time before the kingdom's influence reached him. He had to speed things up. He decided the next target was to obtain a fragment of a holy relic kept in the palace, and he would do it on the upcoming field trip. A week later, at Lindeburn Station, Ludger and his students arrived in the capital. He instructed, "Your guides for today are waiting at the central square. Make sure no one gets lost." The students exclaimed, "Wow, this is the capital, Lindeburn." The bustling modern city spread out before them. "It's been 7 years since I last came here. The capital has grown so fast." He recalled, At first I was assigned here under the identity Gerard, but instead I came as a professor. Truly, no one can predict what life will bring. Their attention fell on a group near the large fountain. Wow, a huge fountain. Hey, look at that group over there. They were the trip's guides. Caroline Monarch, a mercenary mage, Phython affiliated with the Dissident Alliance, Loina Pavlini, also affiliated with the Dissident Alliance, and Casey Selmore, a mage of Celadon. In the heart of Lindeburn, Ludger unexpectedly met Veronica DeVille, the deputy captain of the Cold Steel Knights, who had appeared during the train accident. She revealed that all the knights had been deployed to protect the Serin students on the field trip, which made Ludger worry about the gap at the northern mountain range. Veronica explained that the alliance with the Uttar Kingdom, having just finished its civil war, had reinforced the border and reduced the risk. Moreover, not only the Cold Steel Knights but many other knight groups had also gathered in the capital, signaling unpredictable events ahead. Ludger followed the pointing finger and saw Tarina Lionhowl, a Nightcrawler knight. Although the Uttar Kingdom seemed stable, he realized the northern border still held risks. Ludger watched Veronica and Tarina, feeling uneasy about the concentration of Nightcrawler knights in the capital. Ludger quickly contacted Sedina with a magic whistle that only a familiar ally could hear. It transmitted a wave of blue to warn of the situation. Ludger glanced and ordered, "Tell Hans that the Cold Steel and Nightcrawler knights are gathering in the capital." She carefully recorded the information, then used her own magic to send the parchment flying. Meanwhile, in the distance, Veronica and Tarina exchanged updates. Veronica's captain was not present in the capital, partly due to the risk of leaving the north, but actually the two just laughed, because the captain simply didn't want to travel far. The conversation turned serious as they recognized unusual activities by the Liberation Army, particularly the Nightcrawler's presence near the capital, which put them on alert. Although Tarina lacked full information, both felt the gravity of the situation. They also surmised a bit. Recently, the Liberation Army's actions had become atypical. Their presence here was meant to guard against unexpected trouble. Tarina expressed concern about moving openly, saying it would only drive the enemy deeper into hiding, while she wanted to sweep away every threat immediately. When discussing whether to inform the Serin students, they agreed it was best not to ruin the children's first field trip over unconfirmed suspicions. Besides, the kids would likely notice something when they saw the knights gathered. Elsewhere, Selena approached Ludger. "Excuse me, Professor Ludger?" Selena came forward to chat, innocent and unaware that every word she spoke seemed to stir a lurking danger. Ludger kept a calm demeanor, replying that the knight's presence was merely a protective order from the palace. But when his gaze settled on the white-haired woman in the authoritative uniform Tarina Lionhowl, his heart tightened. That name was not unfamiliar. Years ago, when he lived under the identity Arsène Lupin, she was the one who hunted him for many years, causing him no small trouble. Then their eyes met. Tarina stopped, intuition hinting at something, a vague sense of having met before. A brief moment, but enough to awaken Ludger's survival instincts. Veronica asked. Tarina replied perfunctorily, yet her gaze never left Ludger. She committed the name to memory, Ludger Cherish. She had read the reports, but the man in front of her gave an unusual impression. Perhaps, after the mission, I should investigate him further, she thought as she departed. Tarina turned away softly, voice low. "Anyway, it seems we've been out quite long. I should return." Veronica nodded, replying lightly, "All right. If you find anything suspicious, let me know." As for Ludger, though he kept a cold exterior, a vague anxiety surfaced within him. Maybe it's just a coincidence. I shouldn't worry too much. In any case, the plan must go on. At midday, at the secret base in Linderbrunn, the tension was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Hans slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "What? 2 out of 3 night orders are gathered in the capital? What the hell is going on?" "I knew it. Things are going too smoothly. Nothing in this world is that easy." His voice dropped, weary to the point he had no energy left to be angry. A small mouse scurried to report from the corner of the table. Hans turned his head, glancing toward Grandere, who was stretched out comfortably on the sofa. In the corner of the room, Grandere lounged on the sofa, her gaze indifferent. Hans keenly felt the pressure of her presence but still tried to appear calm. Grandere's blood-red eyes flashed a challenge. "Is there a problem with me being here?" No, nothing at all." Hans hurriedly waved his hands, swallowing in fear. He tried to regain composure, cautiously asking, "To be honest, I just received a letter from Ludger. It seems something is happening in the capital. Do you happen to know anything about this, Master Grandere?" Grandere laughed coldly, reminding Hans that if he was a subordinate of her disciple, he should investigate on his own rather than wait for help. When Hans hesitated to ask for support because it concerned her disciple, The atmosphere in the room instantly grew oppressively suffocating. Grandair's voice, sharp as a blade, startled Hans into hurried explanations while she waved him off coldly and turned her back. Hans could only ruffle his hair, bewildered by Grandair's unpredictable attitude, resolving to continue despite not understanding why she kept after him. Suddenly, a soft voice sounded from behind. "Check the sewer system." Hans turned back slightly surprised, but the woman on the couch remained silent. He sighed in despair, annoyed that Grander had said just one sentence and left him to fend for himself. Even so, he quickly ordered a few mice to check the situation, just to be sure. In central Lindeburn, the students' field trip was lively. Caroline Monarch, one of the guides, stood in the square with energetic voice, encouraging the students to freely explore the capital. Tessie murmured to Aiden in admiration, "Caroline is just as rumored, full of vitality." Aiden nodded, adding, "She attended the same school as the headmaster but has a completely different personality." Tessie noticed Leo, wondering why he remained withdrawn even on the field trip. Aiden watched Leo from afar, silently, a worry rising about something he'd heard before. He really hoped Leo wasn't involved. Tessie reminded Aiden not to intervene too much, to respect Leo's privacy and observe from a distance. Aiden glanced at her and teased, "Look, you seem concerned about Leo, huh?" Tessie blushed and protested, "No, I'm just annoyed that Leo isn't acting like he used to." During the field trip, the students were drawn to a skewer stall on the street. Tessie and Aiden eagerly moved closer, but Aiden suddenly recognized a familiar voice. It was his master. The person turned around unexpectedly. "Master?" Mandalina, the woman with her black hair tied high, wearing an olive coat, looked surprised. This girl's name was Mandalina, Aiden's master. Mandalina's sudden appearance equally surprised Aiden, Tessie, and Iona. Tessie pointed at Mandalina. "Your master? She's your master?" While everyone focused on talking with Mandalina, Leo took advantage of the distraction to slip into a deserted alley, secretly separating himself from the group. He walked into an empty alley. When his steps stopped in the alley, Leo suddenly heard a cold voice. "You're late." In front of him stood a man wearing a hat, eyes serious. He said briefly, "The plan will proceed as scheduled," then lowered his voice to ask, "What's the Seorin student's schedule?" Leo remained silent, his face wavering. He was hiding something. Meanwhile, outside, the atmosphere was completely different. Tessie, Aiden, and the others laughed, as Mandalina, Aiden's master, recounted old memories. Aiden cheerfully boasted, "I found her starving on the street, so I gave her a loaf of bread." Mandalina smiled awkwardly. "In return, I taught him counter magic." Tessie gaped. "You learned magic just for a loaf of bread? So lucky." The little girl asked curiously, "But if Aiden didn't have magical talent, would you still have taught him?" Laughter filled the stall area. Mandalina teased Aiden, making him scratch his head and grin sheepishly. Standing beside them, Tessie sighed, thinking the two were so alike they never hid their feelings. Suddenly Mandalina placed a hand on Aiden's shoulder, proud. "I didn't expect you to have such ability that you could inherit me. Maybe it's fate, right?" After saying that, she sprang up, putting her cloak back on. "Well, I must go now. No dawdling." Mandalina winked mischievously. "Yes. Your master now has a proper job, handling important matters." Aiden nearly teared up. "I'm so relieved. I was afraid you were starving somewhere." Mandalina froze, blushing. Ack. Hey, that's not how you speak to your master." Before turning away, Mandalina suddenly leaned in close, her voice low and a bit mysterious. "Oh right, Aiden. One piece of advice before I go: try to stay near your guides." Aiden looked up, puzzled. "Near them? Why?" Mandalina just laughed, turning her back decisively. "Haha, you never know what might happen. See you later, student." She left amid the square's commotion, but after a few steps, once sure no eyes followed, the smile on Mandalina's face vanished. After ensuring it was safe, she took out a gleaming golden pocket watch from her coat and raised it, speaking with a seriousness entirely unlike before. "I will return to the palace at once, Your Highness." Ludger and his group of students were led by guides through the glass corridor inside Devalk Palace. Light reflecting off the transparent panes created countless brilliant bands of color, leaving the procession nearly breathless. A chorus of awed whispers echoed throughout the space. Selena smiled, eyes betraying her admiration. "I never expected the royal family to let us tour places like this." Selena worried. "Do you think the other students will be fine under the advisor's supervision?" Ludger scanned the area, his sharp gaze settling on the advisors. "Many of them are at a level comparable to the headmaster. I think they'll be fine." Selena exhaled softly, while Ludger maintained his composure, his eyes quietly following the radiant vaulted glass ceiling above, where the light glittered on each flawless ornamental shard like a closed door. He tightened his grip slightly. Finding the relic wouldn't be difficult since the fragments resonated with each other, but leaving this place was the real problem. The palace was vast, guarded heavily, and surrounded by magical barriers that made spatial teleportation useless. Amid Devalk Palace's splendor, while Ludger quietly calculated an escape route, the sound of footsteps cut through his thoughts. A man appeared at the end of the corridor, blonde hair, a navy uniform trimmed in white, his bearing so stately the whole group fell silent. He bowed and said in a deep voice, "I am Phasius, a knight of the royal guard." The atmosphere immediately trembled. Whispers spread among the students. Phasius's gaze swept the group, and then stopped. "Is there a Ludger Cherish here?" All eyes turned to Ludger. He stepped forward, calm as ever. "That's me. Do you need me for something?" Phasius smiled faintly, polite, yet unreadable. "Oh, Lord Ludger Cherish. It's an honor to meet you. If possible, may I have a moment of your time?" When Phasius requested it, Ludger only offered a slight smile and declined. "I'm sorry, but I'm currently with students. I can't step away alone." Phasius kept his smile, but a faint pressure crept into his voice. "She wishes to see you." The air seemed to freeze. A second of silence passed, and Ludger's expression sharpened. She? Who was he referring to? He understood the words were not an invitation but a summons. "Very well," he replied calmly. "Let's go." Before leaving, Ludger turned to Selena and the other advisors. "Excuse me for a moment. I'll be right back." Selena nodded, though doubt still flickered in her eyes. As the two figures faded down the glass corridor, the students began to murmur. Why did they call him aside? The royal guard coming personally. This surely isn't normal. Ludger's gaze grew cold. He knew this was not concern but an investigation, or worse, a trap. Meanwhile, in the viewing area, Aiden and Tessie were carefree, enjoying the rare chance to relax. Aiden still thought of his master, while Tessie tossed out a few teasing remarks. Everything seemed normal, until they realized Leo was gone. Aiden, already worried about Leo, immediately ran off to search, in contrast to Tessie's composure. He followed his intuition, passing into a dark alley, where the air hung thick with the scent of danger. A place like this, perfect for meeting someone in secret. The premonition made Aiden uneasy, but he pressed deeper into the dark alley where the cold and silence seemed to swallow each breath. He only hoped he was wrong, but he wasn't. In the dim gloom, Leo faced a man in a bowler hat, mysterious and exuding suffocating pressure. "Why do you not answer me?" the man demanded in a low, authoritative voice. Leo broke out in a cold sweat, voice trembling. "You intend to carry out the plan even while 2 night squads are patrolling? We should focus on securing the future instead." The man glanced over, his eyes piercing the night. "That's precisely why I chose this moment. When they think they're safest, that's when their guard is lowest. This is the perfect time to bring liberation to the common people." Leo froze. "Are you insane? The students are with their advisors. Even if you ambush them, you'll be stopped immediately." He received a mocking smile in reply. "Confronting them is the point. We need to demonstrate our power so the whole world will see." He panicked. "What are you talking about? The top mages of the 6 realms are all here. They are practically strategic level weapons. You want to go against them?" Then he finished with a line that made Leo's blood run cold. "Even so, the plan will proceed. Nothing will change." The man in the hat lowered his voice, saying it wasn't his decision, superiors had ordered it and Leo was forced to cooperate. When Leo objected, he immediately threatened Leo's family, closing off every escape. The rude pat on the shoulder and the casual remark, "I had information from another channel, I called you out just to verify," struck Leo like a lightning bolt. He realized he was merely a pawn being used. As the hat wearer left, a tumult of anger and helplessness erupted inside Leo. The cold admonition, "Think of your family," turned his resistance into invisible shackles, and the final taunt, "Don't do anything foolish. They'll think you're one of us," drove in like an icy blade. Aiden's call made Leo start and turn around. The atmosphere between them was heavy, taut as a drawn string. Aiden's face still showed shock, as if he'd just witnessed something unbelievable. Meanwhile, in Lindebrun's central square, Sedina kept an outward calm but kept glancing back. Casey, the one sitting behind her, watched her every move suspiciously. She's been staring the whole time. "I won't be able to gather intelligence with the magic paper if I'm being watched like this." Sedina panicked, stifling her discomfort. Casey Selmore, however, was thinking differently. Her cold gaze never left that brown-haired assistant, the one she distinctly remembered seeing in Professor Ludger's office. "I don't recall him ever having an assistant. Too strange." Ludger's warning suddenly surged back to mind. The Black Dawn has begun watching her. be careful. Indeed, that warning was not unfounded. Not long after, Casey was attacked in the rain, and only her vigilance allowed her to fight back in time. Sedina hurried across the square, her face composed but her inner self in turmoil. It's okay, this is free time. I can leave whenever I want, she reassured herself, but her steps faltered. A thought flashed that made her heart sink. Wait, Casey Selmore is the legendary detective. She wouldn't act like this by accident. Could it be? She suspects I'm with the Black Dawn. One small mistake, one ill-timed glance, and all her secrets would collapse. At the same time, in the secret base beneath Lindebrun, Hans was tearing his hair out in fury. Why hasn't the girl sent her report? She promised to relay messages regularly. He tried to stay calm, telling himself, maybe the knights are patrolling so it's not easy. At least the last data is still safe. A rustling sound came as the rats returned. Hans squinted. Quick work. Have they finished checking? But their fearful reaction made him pause. What? They can't go deeper into the tunnels. The rats trembled, frantically signaling. Hans grimaced, baffled. They're so terrified, they can't follow orders? But my control over them is strong enough that they'd risk their lives. He fell silent and looked toward Grandair, who lay motionless in the chair. A cold premonition ran down his spine. There's definitely something beneath the underground tunnels. The leader's master must have uncovered a terrible clue. The base's silence was finally broken when Hans slammed his hand down on the table. This is bothering me so much. I really don't want to handle this myself, but the boss's master told me I can't just ignore it. Unable to sit still another second, Hans sprang up and strode toward the adjacent room. The door was thrown open with a bang. Bam! Making the girl reading inside jump. It was Bella Luna Paytona, codename Frances Scott Fitzgerald, a girl with fiery orange-red hair, the pointed ears typical of elves, and eyes that radiated sharp intelligence. Hans pointed at her urgently. Look, get ready to head out immediately. There's a place we must check right now. Bring all necessary investigative tools. Before long, the pair disappeared into the deep tunnels beneath Lindebrun. There, what awaited them was not silence but a gruesome scene. Enormous roots bursting from the rock walls, coiling like living creatures and emitting a pitch-black energy that thickened the air. At the same time, in the capital, within an opulent grounds, a conversation between two other figures took place with solemn air. Phaetus smiled, admiration in his voice. I've heard of you for a long time, Lord Ludger Cherish. You've truly kept the Arcane Council talking for weeks. Ludger merely shook his head slightly, replying in his customary calm tone. It's nothing, just a small coincidence. Phaetus laughed. You're too modest. Only a few people in the world could do what you did. Perhaps that's why the princess is so eager to meet you. Soon after, they approached a gilded pavilion in the royal gardens, where a noblewoman awaited. Phaetus bowed respectfully. Your Highness, by order, I have brought the guest. The female voice rang out lightly, yet like a blade. Well done, Lord Phaetus. Now leave us. I wish to speak with him privately. Yes, Your Highness. That person, Princess Eileen von Exilian, dubbed the future queen of the empire. Back then, he was just a young mage wandering in search of work, who unexpectedly collided with a cloaked figure in the street. That brief moment began a dangerous connection. Back in the present, the princess tilted slightly and smiled mischievously. I've always wanted to see you again, Lord Ludger Cherish. Or do you prefer the name people called you back then? Her voice rang out, each word like a blade piercing the shell of secrecy he'd kept for 7 years. Jack the Ripper. 7 years ago, in the old Lindebrun quarter, a seemingly accidental collision began that dangerous connection. In that moment, both of them realized something was amiss. The girl only had time to clench her teeth in anger. Damn, I used the relic to hide my presence. She didn't expect to be discovered so easily. Ludger froze when a figure bumped into him. The sensation was strangely hollow, as if the person hadn't existed until the moment of collision. Back in the present within De Valk Palace's hushed space, the soft clink of porcelain sounded, mingling with the scent of tea. Ludger and Princess Eileen von Exilian sat opposite each other like two chess masters before a set. You knew who I was from the start? Ludger began, his gaze calm but as deep as an abyss. And when did you start digging into my past? Eileen smiled lightly, confident as if everything were in her palm. Do you really think you could escape my reach simply because we haven't met in 7 years? Especially after you've built such a reputation in the magical community? She lifted her teacup, her tone light but sharp. Moreover, my pieces in Retterbelk have recently been repeatedly intercepted. At that moment, I understood the situation clearly. For if Miss Terina had to struggle with anyone, that person would surely be you. Without bothering to refute, Eileen set her teacup down, her gaze piercing. So, what is your purpose in coming to the palace? Just official business, Ludger replied, his tone even and indifferent. I am here as a supervising instructor from the Serin Academy. A faint smile curved the princess's lips. Do you really think I would believe that lie? What are you searching for in this palace, Ludger Cherish? Ludger looked straight into Princess Eileen's eyes, his gaze cold, remaining silent. The air between them froze. 30 minutes earlier in the Lindebrun sewers, a black crow descended and perched on Hans's hand. A small piece of paper was tied to its leg. Now, take this to him. The large crow flapped its wings and vanished into the darkness. Bellaluna frowned as she walked. Do you really think that bird will fly to the leader? Hans laughed confidently. Of course. With my current abilities, that's no problem. The two continued deeper underground, where ancient tunnels stretched like a maze. Bellaluna glanced around, a note of amazement in her voice. I know they're a millennia, old empire, but who expected such an extensive subterranean system? Hans nodded, squinting at the moss on the walls. Indeed. But look, everything is decaying. My rats can't infiltrate. This isn't an ordinary sewer. He pointed up at the ceiling, where a massive root had pierced through the stone. Do you remember what we saw when we entered? The root of a gigantic tree. Do you know what it is? Bellaluna shook her head, puzzled. I've never seen a tree like that. Wait, perhaps. Before she could finish, a roar reverberated, shaking the tunnel. Both of them froze. What was that sound? Hans spun around. Bellaluna answered in panic. Sounds like a wild beast. From the darkness, a giant black tiger with glowing green eyes roared and lunged straight at them. Screams echoed through the sewers, mixed with the thundering of fleeing footsteps. The creature let out a fierce bellow, the sound reverberating throughout the Lindebrun tunnels. Hans and Bellaluna turned and fled desperately. What the hell is that? A cryptid? Hans panted, shouting. Why is it here? Bellaluna was almost exhausted, nearly stumbling. I can't run anymore. Don't give up, unless you want to be eaten. Hans barked. He glanced back, his heart pounding. The creature was closing in. Damn. Should I fully transform? But if I'm not strong enough to fight it. Wait, stop, Bellaluna shouted. Hans halted, gasping. What? Look closer. That's not a cryptid, it's a chimera. The statement stunned Hans. A chimera? A bioweapon created by dark mages, hybridized from multiple creatures. Bellaluna quickly drew a glowing device, smiling with excitement. Hans panicked. Are you crazy? Whether cryptid or chimera, it's trying to kill us. But Bellaluna scoffed. A cryptid is one thing, a chimera. I fear it not. As the beast charged, Bellaluna cast a spell. A burst of golden light exploded. A brown gold vine lashed out and bound the chimera tightly, constricting it amid enraged roars. Hans stood stunned. My goodness, she's powerful. Now I understand why the boss brought her along. Bellaluna narrowed her eyes, confident. I'm not afraid of things made by humans. Look, its form is so perfect, almost adorable. Hans slapped his forehead. Enough. Move before it breaks free. Why run? She replied nonchalantly. Hans barked back. Because it's dangerous. Bellaluna, her eyes sparkling like stars, completely ignored Hans. She exclaimed excitedly, this is a perfect chance to see what's inside it. She stepped closer, her eyes alight with a sick thrill. Huh. I'll examine you myself and see how you're built, cutie. The chimera growled and backed away as if it, too, feared her. Hans shouted in panic. I swear, I will never get involved with this elf again. Meanwhile, at the palace, the atmosphere between Ludger and Princess Eileen was taut as a drawn bowstring. Searching for something? Ludger replied calmly. I don't know what you're talking about. I came only as an official guest. Eileen smiled coldly. Will you keep denying it? The incident at the Kunst auction. You know you were there. She continued, her voice hardening. I bought up all the artifacts that fell into the underworld's hands, but there was only one item, a fragment of something whose purpose remains unknown. Princess Eileen smiled faintly, her eyes glinting mischievously. Is what you're looking for in the palace? That very fragment? Ludger fell silent. A cold thought flashed through his mind. I shattered and disposed of everything, and yet she still managed to recover it. Truly, she hasn't changed, steadfast and dangerous. At this point he had no choice but to admit it. The princess laughed, a sound as cold as a blade on glass. Haha, you finally stopped pretending. But if it's what you crave, then it lies in the royal treasury. Silence fell. Eileen leaned in, her gaze boring through Ludger. You don't intend to sneak in there, to steal, do you? In any case, it would be far better if you enter through the main gate, honorably and legally. The words hit the core of the matter. The remark made Ludger pause. The princess's tone turned serious, with no more pretense. Actually, I want to give you a task, like 7 years ago. She raised her teacup, lightly rotated it, and spoke with authority. As for the reward, I'll allow you to choose 3 items from the royal treasury. 3 items from the royal vault? An enticing and dangerous offer. No one has ever been allowed into that place except the royal family. He understood well that anyone who accepted a favor from Princess Eileen would have to pay a corresponding price. Ludger stared at the princess, his voice calm but icy. I want more details before I decide. Is this related to your summoning of the 2 night orders to the capital? Eileen nodded slightly, a knowing smile on her lips. I've received reports of a suspicious group infiltrating the capital. Despite search orders, no trace has been found. Ludger frowned. Is it possible they've escaped the capital again? The princess answered immediately, her tone firm. No, I've sealed every entrance. There's no way they left here without detection, which means they're still hiding inside. He exhaled softly. So you summoned the night orders as an emergency precaution? Exactly, she nodded. And I need your skills, you who can infiltrate, investigate, and complete the mission no matter where the enemy hides. Ludger was silent for a moment. She didn't say everything, but it was clear she had investigated thoroughly before deciding to call on him. Even if he refused, he couldn't escape, and the children were still in the capital. He couldn't withdraw. Finally, he answered, I trust you will keep your promise about the reward. Eileen smiled faintly, full of confidence. Of course, you've worked for me before. You know I always keep my word. Ludger asked, any additional information? At that moment, the sound of shoes tapping on stone steps rang out. Eileen replied softly, wait a moment. My maid will bring the news. Ah, she's here. A woman with her black hair tied up, wearing a neat uniform, entered respectfully. Your Highness, I have arrived. Here is the report. But when she looked up, she froze. Her gaze met Ludger's and she immediately screamed, Eek! You! What are you doing here? Ludger raised an eyebrow, surprised. You? The air went cold. The princess looked at both of them, while Mandalina trembled, stammering and unable to speak. At the Crystal Palace Museum, a festive atmosphere prevailed. Crowds flowed in to admire the kingdom's oldest repository of magical history. Amid the throng was Loina Pavlini, a 6th-rank witch of the Despair Alliance, trying to fit into the role of an unwilling tour advisor, a social duty she was obviously poor at. Beside her was Lin, a first-year student, curious about everything around her. The girl hesitated and asked about non-elemental mana, the energy she possessed that always set her apart from others. Can I find magic related to non-elemental mana here? Loina was surprised but softened when she learned Lin was a pupil of Master Ludger, whom she had met in the Arcane's chamber. They moved deeper into the hall, among countless magical artifacts glittering under enchanted lamps. They stopped at the irregular magic section, displaying forms of magic beyond the 4 basic systems. Loina enthusiastically explained Dream Walk Dream Magic, a branch of divine magic used by paladins and luminous clerics. They consider it a miracle granted by the gods. But since it still relies on modern magical theory, we treat it as a quasi-magic. Lin fell silent before the statue of a praying wizard, the reflected magical light giving her a strange feeling, as if being drawn into an invisible sacred power. She felt her heart race, her eyes fixed on the beam of light emanating from the statue. Lin stood silent. Her gaze lingered on the statue, where the light trembled as if alive, as though that light were watching her. A faint, nearly invisible thread of mana quivered around Lin. Her eyes shone brightly. That light was revealing something deeper. Back at the palace, the meeting between Princess Eileen and Ludger grew tenser than ever as Mandalina, the princess's maid, suddenly appeared. The princess merely sighed and kept her tone calm. Stop, she is now mine. But Ludger didn't believe it. He narrowed his eyes, recalling the past. Mandalina had once been an elite operative of Alpha Team, the Black Ops secret force, and the right hand of Marquis Tepperone, the mastermind of the coup 7 years ago. The truth froze the room. Mandalina trembled, her face ashen. Eileen only nodded slightly, admitting. The princess casually revealed that she had never forgiven Mandalina, yet kept her because of her usefulness. The once cowardly foe had become a loyal handmaiden of the royal household, leaving even seasoned men like Ludger at a loss. Mandalina did not escape by guile or force. She was pardoned because her surrender had made her appear utterly pitiable. From a timid opponent of Ludger's, she had become a faithful servant of the princess. Ludger could only sigh and accept helplessly. I understand, Your Highness. Princess Eileen leaned forward, her gaze turning icy again. So, Mandalina, what news do you bring? Mandalina quickly reported. The suspicious group was hiding in the capital's sewer system. However, heavy surveillance prevented her from advancing deeper. The princess immediately concluded. If even you were stopped, then that must be their base. No sooner had she spoken than a whooshing sound echoed. Ludger rose from the table at once. He walked to the railing and reached out. A black crow swooped down and perched on Ludger's hand. He took the small paper tied to its leg and skimmed it. My subordinate has successfully infiltrated via another route. Inside is a vast underground factory. The princess froze for a moment, then fell silent. Ludger sensed something was wrong. Your Highness, are you hiding something from me? Eileen looked him in the eye, her tone firm. No, even I know very little about that place. She changed her tone, more serious. Do you know how long this nation's history really is? About 1,000 years. No, she replied. In fact, it's less than 500. I learned that from the secret records in the royal archives. The words cut the air like a knife. In truth, the Exilian Empire is the successor to that kingdom. Like a new painting laid over an old canvas, history was completely replaced, the old royal line erased. But a few traces were preserved and integrated into current history. Ludger's voice went cold. So who could do that? Erase an entire nation from humanity's memory? Eileen met his gaze, her eyes as sharp as a blade. You already know the answer, the kingdom of Bredis. The sewer system beneath the capital was not merely old ruins, but the remnants of a civilization erased from history, one that existed before the Exilian Empire. Then she revealed the true identity of those hiding underground. They were the Liberation Army. Ludger immediately realized Nikolai, the manipulator in the shadows, had finally revealed himself. He stood up, his voice as cold as steel. If that's so, they'll strike today, or at the latest tomorrow. Because right now, students from Serin Academy along with key mages from the Tower of Magic were gathered in the capital, a perfect target for a large-scale attack. Eileen nodded slowly. Makes sense. But with 6th rank mages present here, it would be difficult for the Liberation Army to act on its own. But Ludger replied curtly, they have a gunpowder called Fire Silence. Even a 6th rank mage can die if caught off guard. He bowed his head and left, leaving the princess looking at him with a mixture of admiration and regret. Even after 7 years, I still can't keep up with you. On his way out of the palace, Ludger saw Mandalina smiling foolishly, as if she had forgotten the man she once nearly killed. He only sighed softly. Truly a strange woman. Ahead, Phaesius, the royal guard, was waiting. Phaesius, in his royal guard uniform, bowed formally. It's an honor to stand with you, Jack the Ripper. A nickname only those in the royal circle dared speak. Ludger replied with a cold look. I look forward to working with you as well. 30 minutes later, in the city of Lindebrunn, the two melted into the crowd. Phaesius asked, what are you going to do next? Go underground right away? Ludger shook his head, his eyes fixed toward the distant sunset. No, my subordinates are down there. We'll wait for their report before acting. He added, his gaze sharp. Not all of them are underground. While we wait, we'll observe the city and look for any suspicious individuals. Phaesius suggested, why not get Detective Casey to help? She's in the capital. But Ludger only shook his head, decisive. No, if she gets involved, things will get messier. And if I leave my post, the students will panic. No sooner had he finished than a call rang out, breaking the tense air. Professor Ludger. Aiden ran up, out of breath and sweating profusely. Teacher, I'm here. I have urgent news to tell you. Ludger's eyes narrowed, his first reflex was suspicion. Behind him, Leo stood quietly to the side, his face frozen. He tried to avoid his teacher's gaze, but it was useless. Aiden recounted everything, detail by detail, and when he stopped, the air grew so heavy you could hear hearts beating. A voice called Leo's name. He flinched, cold sweat breaking out, stammering, yes. Ludger bent over, his shadow falling over the student. His low voice sounded, carrying a pressure that nearly took the other's breath away. Is it true? What I just heard? 1 hour earlier, in the quiet alley. When Aiden softly called his name, Leo froze. His heart raced, his throat tight with bitterness. Had he heard it? Exactly how much had he heard? Aiden's gaze was like a blade exposing every secret. Everything had been heard. It's over. Aiden spoke slowly, his voice full of concern. Leo, are you okay? Just a simple question, but to Leo it felt like the final blow. He let out a hoarse, bitter laugh. You ask if I'm okay? Don't pretend. You heard everything, didn't you? I'm with the Liberation Army. With no escape left, Leo screamed as if unburdening all his torment. The person you trusted as a friend is actually a liar. A terrorist. I deceived you. I deceived Tessie, Iona, everyone. But instead of anger, Aiden just stood there calm, his eyes full of worry. He stepped closer and said softly, Leo, I'm sorry for eavesdropping. But you can still stop. You haven't done anything wrong yet. Those words made Leo completely collapse. He clenched his fists, his voice choked. If I betray them, my family will be in danger. Besides, who would trust two students like us? With every escape closed off, Aiden could only think of one name, Professor Ludger. At the sound of it, Leo immediately went pale. Are you insane? If he considers someone an enemy, no one gets away, not even a student. You'd be seen as an accomplice too. But Aiden only smiled faintly and wiped the sweat from his brow. Well, maybe. But I think I should try to convince him. Leo could only sigh. Truly the biggest fool I've ever known. Back to the present. Before Ludger, Leo lowered his head, hands clenched and trembling. Ludger's voice was low and cold as steel. What Aiden told me, is it true? No way out. Leo took a deep breath and answered softly, yes. Surprising everyone, Ludger did not condemn him but quietly accepted. Then we must hurry if we want to save your family. Leo was bewildered, then overwhelmed upon hearing the offer of help. Tears, shame, and gratitude surged. Then he looked over solemnly. Since it's come to this, Lord Phaseus, please assist us. Phaseus immediately took on the task. Aiden rejoiced as a rapid rescue plan was launched in an instant. The moment that seemed impossible turned into a moment of forgiveness. Ludger gently but firmly said, as a professor, helping a student is only natural. Emotions held back, shame rising within. From despair and fear to the moment of being forgiven, Leo was not only saved but also given back faith in human kindness amid the chaos of war. He broke into sobs. Thank you so much, Professor Ludger. At the Liberation Army's secret headquarters in Lindebrunn, the situation grew chaotic. Branches were being uncovered one after another. Carl, the branch's general manager, frowned. The Empire acted faster than expected. With both night squads striking at once, it's hard to avoid this. Then he gave a reckless order, move through the sewers, prepared to fight to the death. Suddenly a horrific explosion rang out. The shockwave swept everything away. Those in cloaks were flung amid smoke and flames. From within the smoke, a tall figure stepped out, each step steady. A deep, cold voice sounded, weighing down the space. So, it's you. That person was none other than Professor Ludger. He stood amid the rubble, his voice icy. Scum, dare touch my student. One dying man moaned. Another ground his teeth and shouted in fury. Bastards, that kid, he betrayed us. Carl stammered in pain as he watched Ludger advance toward him. He couldn't understand how the man knew about fire's silence. In his fury, Carl tried to attack with the mindset of taking his enemy down with him. He roared, die, and another violent explosion erupted. But amid the epicenter, Ludger still stood firm. The flames were sucked back, coiling into a single point of light in his hand, Quasimodo's spirit stone. The amber stone glowed in his hand, absorbing the blast simply because it contained the element of fire. The enemy collapsed in terror. Ludger, cold as steel, said, how dare you threaten and exploit my student? A punch fell like thunder. Carl screamed as he was lifted by the collar. Ludger showed no flinching. He questioned and punished at once. How does it feel when your whole body shakes like this? As if your blood and organs are being twisted? The words chilled him to numbness. The brief, brutal interrogation continued until Carl blurted out in despair. There's no time for you. An agent has already been sent to kill that kid's family. But, Ludger remained calm. That's not something I need to worry about, it's already being handled. The scene cut to a deserted alley in Lindebrunn. The clang of metal rang out. An agent fell. The one who knocked him down was none other than Lord Phaseus, the royal guard, once the princess's shadow blade. He then looked back at the two people behind him and gently asked, are you two hurt? A girl replied, oh yes, but the agent was not dead yet. He sprang up, twin blades flashing steel. Not bad. But you won't kill me. He forced himself up, drew two knives. The cold steel blades gleamed. He crouched, ready to attack. He slashed wildly, the knives ripping the air, brutal. Each stroke carried a frenzy of rage. Phaseus only smiled faintly. That was a good opportunity just now. As for me, I could kill you whenever I please. At that moment, the air seemed to split. A surge of blue energy flared. The blue light shot forth, tearing the space. The agent was hurled and crashed to the ground. 30 minutes later, Leo finally reunited with his mother and sister. His family was safe. With a trembling, emotional voice, he offered deep thanks to Ludger, who had saved them from the disaster. Ludger calmly replied that it was his duty, then advised Leo to spend some time with his family before returning to the academy. Phaseus stood beside him, half joking, half skeptical. You're going to let him go? Even though he helped the Liberation Army. Ludger answered, his gaze still distant. Do you see it? Does he look like them to you? I trust him not because he's a student, but because he values his family. Those words left Phaseus silent. In his mind, the princess's words from years past suddenly echoed. Phaseus, the reason I chose you as my shadow is because you are willing to get your hands bloody, but in your heart, still pursue justice. That very contradiction made him think of Jack the Ripper, someone rational yet vulnerable to human emotion. As if touched in the deepest part of his heart, Photius could only sigh softly. Then he inquired briefly about the situation. Ludger replied calmly that he had handed the agents over to the knights, and according to the testimony, they were preparing a large-scale terror attack, potentially targeting the Crystal Palace or the Grand Square. Just when it seemed everything had settled, the story suddenly exploded literally. The calm between Ludger and Photius was quickly torn apart by a shocking explosion, marking the beginning of the tragedy at the center of Lindebrunn. Ludger and he immediately rushed off, their gazes turning razor-sharp. Emergency location, Lindebrunn city center. The ground shook. Manhole covers were blown skyward. From the earth, waves of malformed creatures poured forth like a waking nightmare, hybrids of wolf and tiger, eyes blazing gold, backs bristling with spikes. People's screams mixed with smoke and fire, creating an apocalyptic chaos. A giant beast with blazing yellow eyes roared and lunged, knocking a man down in the crowd. He cried out in terror. At that moment, a knight emerged from the dust. He subdued a massive monster with his bare hands, then bellowed in a booming voice, "Hey, you kid, are you trying to wreck the whole street?" And that was none other than Phyron, a level 6 mage of the Shattered Dream Alliance, famed for his extraordinary physical strength. The one answering was Caroline Monarch, the hot-headed pink-haired mage, also of the Alliance. She shouted, irritated, "Now's not the time to care about that, you muscle-brained show-off. Clear them out instead of catching them one by one." Amid seas of fire and piled monster corpses, the two argued loudly as if nothing serious were happening. Yet their reluctant teamwork was holding an entire front. Meanwhile, at the main gate of the Crystal Palace, explosions and smoke had reached. Beams of crimson magic flashed among the surging monsters, signaling that this was only the beginning of a citywide catastrophe. Behind the defensive line, soldiers and mages fought frantically in unison, their shouts drowning out the monsters' roars. "Keep firing. Don't let them advance an inch." Loiness flames erupted like a crimson storm, sweeping across the battlefield and incinerating the approaching horde of beasts. With the situation hanging by a thread, students from Serin Academy also rushed to the front lines. Among them, Princess Arendir, who should have been protected, was the first to step forward, declaring firmly, "If the defenses break, none of us will survive. Let us help." The statement stunned both knights and soldiers. In the end, they could only nod in agreement. "All right. But if things get out of hand, fall back immediately." Immediately after, the sky seemed to ignite. A barrage of magic bolts shot out continuously, like fireworks in an apocalyptic night. The monsters howled. Their barbed tails whipped up, hundreds of spines fired like a rain of metal. Screams, blood, and the clash of steel rang out like a chilling symphony of war. Flora shouted in panic, "We have to stop those spikes. Cheryl, can you do it?" Cheryl, the blonde girl, stepped into the hail of magical projectiles, green mana enveloping her entire body. A massive wall of ice surged up, blocking the full onslaught of spines. The impact sounded like thunder, but not a single point pierced through. At that moment, Flora seized the opportunity. She raised her hand and unleashed swirling purple lightning bolts aimed at her. Magical circles spun in the air and then crashed down like an electric storm. Monsters were torn apart by a power that stole viewers' breath, the battlefield glowing with arcs of lightning. Two students standing behind could only gawk. Truly amazing. Whoa. I knew she was a prodigy, but in real combat, she's a monster. But before excitement could subside, a new threat descended. Two other giant beasts leapt up from the rooftops, swinging their tails and firing hundreds of spines like a machine gun. Flora froze, unable to react in time. At that life or death moment, Lin lunged forward to shield you. A circle of mana flared, forming a massive energy shield that stopped the entire attack. Flora gasped for breath while Lin turned and asked urgently, her voice hoarse with exertion, "Are you all right?" Amid the battlefield shrouded in smoke and fire, a shaft of golden light suddenly tore through the gray sky. The two students looked up, eyes stunned. Then, in the blink of an eye, thousands of holy beams descended at once, sweeping away the remaining horde of monsters. As the light faded, a cloaked figure hovered in midair, wand blazing, Professor Ludger Cherish. His voice echoed across the battlefield. "Is everyone all right?" The entire square erupted. Cheers surged. "Hooray, Professor Ludger, you saved us." He descended as lightly as a breeze, but his gaze was stern. But a second later he turned to look at Lin and Flora, causing both to flinch. He stepped closer and asked, "Are you okay?" Startled, Flora stammered, "Oh, I'm fine." The professor asked again, "Lin?" "Lin, a bit flustered, replied hastily, "Oh, yes, I'm totally fine." That single question was enough to leave Flora stunned. Inside her, a sharp ache rose like a needle prick. The teacher's eyes and that tone, seemingly gentle, shattered the pride she had clung to. She bowed her head, hands clenched white. An hour later, in the temporary shelter at Lindebrunn Central Square, the atmosphere was taut as a drawn string. On the high dais, Her Highness Eileen von Exilian, First Princess of the Empire, spoke loudly. "First, I extend my deepest gratitude to everyone. Thanks to your courage and efforts, casualties have been kept to a minimum." Knights and mages stood solemn. "Now, report the situation." Lloyd Nightcrawler stepped forward to report. Around 2 in the afternoon, chimera creatures emerged from the sewer system and attacked the city. The Liberation Army exploited the chaos to strike at Serin Academy's students and mentors. "Thanks to the gunpowder intelligence provided by Your Highness, we counterattacked and limited the losses. However, the number of chimera was too great, and some areas suffered heavy damage." Her gaze landed on Ludger. "Without that man, the situation would have been far worse. He even saved Arendir at the Crystal Palace. Once again, we owe him." Eileen thought inwardly, then clenched her hand and said sharply, "Mourning can wait. Now, we need to discuss the next course of action." Immediately, the conference exploded into debate. "We must fortify the lines first. Protecting civilians is the priority." "No, this is our chance to counterattack. Go into the sewers and wipe them out now." Voices overlapped into 2 clear factions. "We don't even know what's down there. What if it's a trap? Don't underestimate our strength. Everyone here is an elite warrior." And amid that chaos, a soft yet authoritative female voice rang out. "Excuse me, may I speak for a moment?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the cloaked girl Casey Selmore, the second daughter of the Selmore family. Eileen nodded. "All right, Casey, I want to hear your view." Casey stepped forward, her voice calm. "The creatures we faced, chimera, could only have been created by dark mages. That means the Liberation Army is collaborating with them. But if they possess enough knowledge to create this, would they stop there? I believe the Liberation Army is hiding something else, a secret weapon capable of toppling the Empire. Today's attack may well have been a diversion to buy time for the real plan." The entire tent fell silent. Caroline briefly frowned, while Fyron said gravely, "A secret weapon. It sounds plausible, but we still can't guess what it is." A few others nodded in agreement. Casey's reasoning was not only logical but opened a new line of inquiry. Ludger glanced at her and lightly nodded. This assessment was indeed sharp. Then he turned away, because he knew. The person they were waiting for had returned. Moments later, the tent flap burst open. Phaecius entered, bowed solemnly. "Your Highness, I, Phaecius, have returned after completing the sewer survey." Princess Eileen nodded slightly, her tone calm but authoritative. "Good, Phaecius. Report." At the back, Ludger remained silent. All the data had actually been gathered by Hans and Bellaluna. Phaecius was merely the coordinator. A moment from their earlier communication flashed through his mind. "That's all we found, boss." "Good. Withdraw safely first." Then he looked at the man beside him. "Lord Phaecius, please report everything you just learned to Her Highness." Phaecius, seeming flustered, asked in surprise, "Huh? Why don't you report it yourself to her?" Professor Ludger explained. "There will be an expanded meeting in the main tent with many high-ranking representatives. I'm just a professor. It's inappropriate for me to present such sensitive information directly." Phaecius nodded in understanding. "I see. Then I will speak at the appropriate time." He knew well it would be difficult for anyone to suspect one of Her Highness's closest aides. The meeting fell quiet as Princess Eileen pointed to the report, her voice cold but decisive. "They've constructed a vast underground facility large enough to incubate hordes of chimera." Veronica gasped. "A facility? But there's not that much space underground." Eileen raised her head, speaking firmly. "There is. When the sewer system was expanded, an area was abandoned due to structural collapse. It's very likely they've occupied that space long ago to prepare for this plan." A captain of the guard pushed forward, face grave. "How could they transport such massive materials through the sewers without being detected?" Princess Eileen replied, "They didn't bring it in from outside. What was needed had already been buried deep underground." Her words landed like a small bomb. A dead world tree. Its massive trunk and roots were reservoirs of life force, the material source for creating chimera. A few hours earlier, in the sewer system, Bellaluna, covered in blood, calmly dissected a chimera corpse on the spot. The stench nearly made Hans vomit. She gave a faint smile. "What a pity one specimen isn't nearly enough." Hans glared at her. "I've seen many horrific things in my life, but this takes the cake. Now be clear, what did you just hint at earlier?" Bellaluna replied nonchalantly. Oh, that? I still need to verify more. Hans snapped. I don't need certainty. Tell me what you suspect. She turned back, her eyes shining with a rare seriousness. Their origin is the world tree, the ancestral source of my people, the elves. Only by going deeper can we find the precise answer. Hans frowned warily. Deeper? Just the two of us would be too dangerous. Bellaluna smiled mysteriously. Don't worry, I have an idea for that. The meeting quickly descended into chaos as the news spread. Whispers filled the room. A world tree beneath the capital? Impossible. The tension was taut as a drawn string. Lutheron, a newly promoted level 6 mage from the tower, stepped forward under curious gazes. Lord Phaesius, are you sure? A world tree can't exist so easily. It was once an ancient primordial sapling and requires extremely strict conditions to grow. Are you saying it lives underground? The air in the meeting thickened as Phaesius asserted loudly. I saw it with my own eyes. Though it has withered, there is no mistaking that it is the world tree. The words cut through the doubt like a blade. The captain of the guard added, if true, its trunk and roots are the raw material for creating chimera. Even dead, it still contains a tremendous amount of life force. Princess Eileen nodded, voice firm. If so, the enemy will surely continue producing more chimera. We must infiltrate the underground area and wipe them out immediately. She ordered, discuss among yourselves, and decide who will be sent into the sewers. A nightcrawler female knight suggested. The most skilled should take on this mission. Commander Terina stood sternly and replied, everyone here is capable. However, we cannot send too many. We should form teams of 2 or 3, Lutheran added. We also need a team specifically to analyze the world tree underground. Casey turned and asked, but who has enough knowledge to do that? A deep voice rang out from the back. I am suited for that role. Casey looked down in surprise. Professor Benamor? Benamor declared confidently. My family once collected and studied a sample of a world tree. As a member of the Benamor clan, specialized in herbalism, I can certainly take on this task. Ludger watched him quietly. He didn't look like he was lying. Then he spoke. But it would be very dangerous for a researcher to go alone. You'll need a few people who can fight, in case of emergency. At that moment, Firen stepped forward, laughing loudly. I think Professor Ludger should go with him. 2 professors together will surely feel comfortable cooperating. Ludger frowned, slightly displeased. What about Caroline or you, Firen? Aren't the 2 of you more reliable? Caroline Monarch shook her head. We can't. Both of us fight by expending a great deal of energy. If anything goes wrong, even a little, uncontrolled energy could bring the whole area down. Firen burst out laughing. Don't worry, compared to other tactical teams, you going will be much safer, Ludger thought to himself, casting a glance at Benamor. It's not that he's afraid to go, just not used to working with this person. And why is he so quiet today? He usually objects the most. The princess slightly nodded and closed the meeting. So the analysis team is formed. Now only the tactical teams remain. 30 minutes later, at the supply tent of the shelter. Oh, hello boss. Yes, I received the information you sent. Well done. Ludger approached. Hans looked tense and said, sorry for acting without informing you. Ludger replied calmly, it's fine, but I'm rather surprised you went down into the underground yourself. Hans replied awkwardly, because my master told me to inspect that area carefully. Ludger raised an eyebrow. Your master? If she said so, I should be even more cautious when going down. Although it's probably not too serious, otherwise she would have gone down herself. Ludger turned to Hans and said, all right, but judging from the information you brought back, it seems you went quite deep. Just the 2 of you. Wasn't that dangerous? Hans recalled the explanation. Technically, we didn't really go down. After she dissected a chimera, she made something on the spot and put it into a syringe. After injection, the chimera became oddly docile. According to her, that substance affects part of the brain, changing their command response mechanism, or something like that. Thanks to that, I can control the injected ones. I released a few into the enemy camp to gather intelligence. Hans smiled proudly. And now, I can even see through their eyes. Ludger nodded slightly. Oh, in that case, I suppose I won't need a detailed report anymore. He turned to leave, voice steady. Continue the investigation. If there's any urgent information, report to me immediately. Hans replied solemnly. Understood, boss. As Ludger was about to go, Hans suddenly called after him. Bellaluna, that young woman, said she has something she wants to ask of you. A short while later, at Lindebrun Center, Bellaluna, the elf woman with a bright smile, appeared before the World Tree analysis team. Professor Benamor narrowed his eyes suspiciously. An elf to analyze the World Tree? Can we trust her? Ludger replied confidently. Princess Eileen has vouched for her. That smooth lie would likely be overlooked after all. Bellaluna was the first to discover the World Tree, and with her accompanying them, they'd be safer. Professor Benamor, leading the group, sighed and ordered, "There's not much time. Come on, let's go." No idle chatter along the way. A short while later, inside the sewers. The air was thick with mildew, streams of water rushed along the corridors. Contrary to his earlier sternness, Benamor beamed as he chatted with Bellaluna. "Wow. It's been ages since I've met someone this easy to talk to. Can we keep in touch outside of work, Miss Bellaluna?" Bellaluna, smiling broadly, answered, "Sure, as long as it doesn't bother you, Sir Chris." The two chatted happily. Ludger, witnessing it, could only sigh in resignation. Perhaps the two really get along. They pressed deeper. Benamor scanned around. Strange, still no sign of the World Tree's roots. Ludger, walking ahead, replied, "Phasia said he saw them as soon as he entered, but that passage has been taken by another tactical team." Suddenly, the scrape of claws on stone rang out, followed by a ferocious roar. Two giant chimera emerged from the darkness. Benamor exclaimed, "Chimera? They're here too." Ludger stepped forward calmly. "It seems. About 10 of them. I'll handle them." However, Benamor stopped him. "Let me take care of it. I can handle that number." Ludger turned and said, "If you insist." The ferocious chimera lunged forward. Benamor drew several vials, then threw them forcefully ahead, producing a burst of purple light. The vials shattered. A deep purple liquid spilled out and began to vaporize, spreading through the air. The chimera were engulfed by the toxic smoke. They roared in pain and distress, then collapsed en masse. Ludger, surprised, said, "I didn't expect chimera to be so susceptible to poison." Bellaluna's eyes glittered with admiration as she praised, "You mixed 3 reagents to maximize the poison's potency, right?" Benamor blushed and laughed with pleasure. "Haha, you have a sharp eye. Truly the expert the princess recommended." Ludger glanced at the pile of chimera corpses and said, "It seems this passage is blocked by the toxic fumes." Benamor reassured him, "Don't worry. Once it meets fresh air, it will neutralize quickly. Rest a moment, then we'll move on." Meanwhile, in another sewer, Casey and Tarina confronted their pasts and private thoughts. Tarina expressed surprise at encountering Casey in such dire circumstances, while Casey, cold and pensive, posed a haunting question. How would you feel if someone were treated like the villain, even though they did nothing wrong? Then she replied with a question. Tarina, how would you feel if someone were treated like the villain, even though they did nothing wrong? And Tarina answered with embarrassment and thoughtfulness. Misunderstood, hated, and always blamed. Before she could continue, a low growl echoed from the darkness. Both immediately went on alert as dozens of green eyes flashed, creeping closer. Tarina tilted her head and said, "Perhaps it's best we leave this conversation for later." Casey agreed. "You're right. I was foolish to be sentimental at a time like this." At the same time, elsewhere in the sewer, Ludger's team continued deeper toward the center. Before them, a vast, withered root system intertwined among the rubble. Benamor exclaimed in astonishment, "Whoa, it's really here, the roots of the World Tree." Ludger calmly surveyed the area, pondering. "This place is far larger than the others. I'm not sure what this used to be, but now it's only ruins." Benamor immediately urged, "Let's analyze it before the enemy arrives." Bellaluna responded eagerly, "All right." But at that moment, Ludger froze. His gaze had caught something unexpected. "Wait a moment." After hearing that, Benamor asked anxiously, "What's wrong?" Ludger pointed upward. "Look up above the roots." Benamor looked up in surprise. A cloth-wrapped object, resembling a mummy, was reaching its hand out from the root trunk. Benamor stepped back half a pace and exclaimed, "Wah, what is this?" Meanwhile, in Lindebrun Central Square, which had been turned into a temporary refuge, soldiers were directing citizens. "Get inside quickly. Take the wounded to that tent." Amid the chaos, Lynn sat curled up under a tree, her face pale. Arendir ran over, voice worried. "Lynn, are you all right?" Lynn startled and immediately asked back, "Oh, Arendir, have you seen your sister? I mean the first princess?" Arendir avoided her gaze and mumbled, "Oh, yeah, I saw her. She kept fussing and worrying about me, so I got held up there for quite a while." Lynn laughed. "Ha ha, ha ha. It seems the princess really cares about you." Arendir pouted. "Yeah, She cares so much she treats me like a toy. She scolded Lin sternly for her reckless actions at the Crystal Palace, making Lin lower her head in remorse and explain that her body reacted before she realized it. Just then, Flora and Cheryl walked by. Arendir was still upset. Why didn't Flora even say thank you? Lin defended. Maybe she was panicked too. Flora had accidentally overheard the whole conversation. After that, Arendir changed the subject. Anyway, it would be bad if Professor Ludger weren't there. Lin smiled in agreement. Yeah, he's really cool. Suddenly, Lin froze. A strange sensation ran down her spine. She bent over, bracing a hand on the ground, and swayed slightly. Arendir asked in alarm, What's wrong? She trembled and replied weakly, It's nothing. I'm just a bit dizzy. But inside, Lin knew something was very wrong. Her body began to shake. Oh, what is this feeling? Before her, streams of black mana were closing in. She panicked as she realized it was coming from the ground. No, from beneath the earth. Back in the sewer, the analysis team faced the strange object sprouting from the world tree's roots. Ludger and Benamor watched the mummy surface, like someone struggling to break free from the roots. Though Benamor worried the object might be dangerous, Ludger remained calm and warned everyone to be cautious. Then Benamor turned to Bellaluna, voice serious. Please be on guard for any danger, Miss Bellaluna. Let's begin. Bellaluna nodded in agreement. They began their analysis. Benamor reached out and touched the root, and a shimmering blue mana flowed to cover the entire trunk. But he quickly realized someone had deliberately blocked the data within the world tree. Ludger guessed it might be because the roots were dead, but Benamor asserted it was largely the work of the dark mages who created the chimera. Both showed clear disappointment at the scant information they had. It seemed they'd have to return without collecting anything more. Just then, Bellaluna interrupted, making both of them look up in surprise. Actually, I discovered something. Benamor looked up, astonished. You found something? Bellaluna concentrated and placed her hand on the root. A gentle light radiated from her palm. The roots are dead, but a huge life force remains trapped inside. It's possible the dark mages extracted it for their use. Ludger stroked his chin, pondering. That fits the hypothesis raised in the earlier meeting. What about that disgusting creature? Did you detect anything? The three turned their attention to the body stuck in the roots. Bellaluna said softly, I believe that human-like form does not belong to the world tree. Benamor frowned. Not belong. What do you mean? Bellaluna nodded lightly. Someone sealed an entity inside these roots, and even now, it's still trying to break free. That's why its shape looks like it's writhing. Ludger repeated pensively. Trying to get out? Benamor cried out in panic. So that thing can move. Bellaluna continued. No. What you're seeing is only the trace of its attempt to escape. Its true form is likely still lying dormant within the world tree's roots. And it's possible the Liberation Army and the Dark Mages are trying to harness that power. Ludger calmly asked on, while Benamor grimaced in utter alarm. So, do you know what it is? She hesitated, an unprecedented gravity in her eyes. Yes, if my guess is right, it's the power of a demon. Both of them froze at once. The air seemed to solidify. Cold sweat beaded at their temples. Ludger glanced up, trying to grasp Bellaluna's words. Benamor still found it hard to believe. A demon. But they're only recorded in ancient texts, they don't actually exist. Bellaluna looked at him and nodded in confirmation. Yes, but there have been people who sense that power. It's not just a legend. Benamor was still unconvinced. But Miss Bellaluna, how did you discover that? I thought all information from the world tree had been sealed. Ludger marveled. Wow. Lady, huh? They must be pretty close. Bellaluna smiled bashfully and replied, Haha, our elf kind can commune with the world tree. Thanks to that instinct, we can sense genetic information from plants, even when it's sealed. Benamor was taken aback. Really? That's different from what I heard from Professor Viorano. Moreover, I thought only the caretaker was permitted to commune with the world tree. It's a bit rude to ask, but didn't you secretly make contact with it before? Ludger answered at once. Of course not. No way. He didn't finish before turning to the side, to see Bellaluna deliberately looking away, cold sweat breaking on her brow. Did she really do that? Bellaluna stammered, a flicker of embarrassment on her face. No big deal. I was only caught once. Ludger jolted, thinking, wait, does that mean you did it more than once? He stared, eyes narrowing in anger as he thought. You should have told me that beforehand, Bellaluna. I thought you were driven out of the forest for your eccentricities. It's a miracle you're even still alive. Sensing the tension rise, Benamor stepped in to mediate. Why are you glaring at her like that? I'm surprised too, but what right do we have to judge elven laws? Bellaluna nodded in agreement, while Ludger clenched his teeth, thinking, easy for you to say you don't bear the consequences. Even a minor slip could spark a war with the elves. Benamor quickly changed the subject. Anyway, we've gathered enough information. Let's go back and report to His Highness. Ludger turned and said, no, we should keep going. If the dark mages really plan to use the demon's power, we must stop them first. Benamor was stunned. What? Isn't reporting what we know more important? Besides, we're not warriors. Ludger analyzed sternly. Demons are treated as fantasy in today's world. No one will believe us without concrete proof. Benamor grimaced in realization. Fair point. But even if we want to pursue them, we don't know where they are. Ludger offered his conjecture. If I were them, I'd set the research lab at the center of this route network. Follow it, and we'll reach their base. He glanced to the other side and continued. Moreover, our escape route no longer seems safe. From behind, two figures in black cloaks, weapons in hand, approached slowly. Ludger immediately strode forward, glancing back to say, please look after Miss Bellaluna, Professor Chris. Benamor tilted his chin smugly. I intended to do that anyway. You don't need to remind me. In another passage of the sewers, an elite squad led by Veronica infiltrated, steady footsteps echoing across the damp tiles. The cold, magical gleam of her sword cleaved through monsters, freezing them in layers of blue crystal when a group of people stood blocking the way ahead. Veronica noticed the roadblockers didn't behave like Liberation Army members she'd met before, giving her an uneasy feeling. Deeper down, at the center beneath the world tree's roots, a massive biological laboratory appeared, roots interwoven with glowing green chemical vials. Andrei Simov, a dark mage and the laboratory's commander, oversaw the extraction of energy from specimens for the Level 3 experiment. Despite setbacks, subordinates reported that Level 2 replicas and Chimera were being deployed to buy time, while Andrei emphasized that the experiment had to be carried out perfectly. In a large containment tank, a burly man lay bathed in red, an energy core implanted in his back. Everything remained within safe parameters, ready for the next phase. Andrei marveled. What an astonishing dedication. I didn't expect a high-ranking member of the Liberation Army to volunteer for such a deadly experiment. Another replied, anyway, that power is so tempting. Enough to make all the pain worthwhile. Andrei looked up at the tangled mass of roots and said, at first, we only planned to use the world tree for terror. Who would have known a demon's power was trapped inside it? A subordinate echoed, indeed, a colossal power far beyond anything humans possess. Something we once thought existed only in legends. Andrei sneered, don't be so foolish. No power is greater than what humanity can wield. They only fear and shun it out of ignorance. Once understood, it will no longer be terrifying. When Level 3 is completed using that power, we will advance to the final level. Suddenly, something leapt out. Andrei thrust his hand forward and unleashed a magical flame. Fwoom! The flames sliced the charging chimera in two, blood spraying everywhere. The subordinate panicked at the magical flame on their commander's hand. Andrei looked at the charred corpse and said gravely, it seems one of the intruders is highly skilled in biology. They've taken control of a Level 1 and are spying on us. Assume they've heard everything just now. Oh my God, the subordinate blurted, trembling. Andrei continued ordering, inspect all remaining chimera, ensure there's nothing unusual. Speed up Level 3. Yes, sir. The corridors were gradually being secured. Veronica's forces pushed deeper in. Meanwhile, Casey and Tarina were sweeping enemies along the way. Ludger's team broke through each barrier, inching closer to the center. Now, it was all a race against time. Whoever was faster would win. A subordinate reported, all those showing abnormal signs have been eliminated. Andrei praised. Well done. Return to your positions. At the refuge tent, Hans ground his teeth in anger. Damn, have they discovered us? He thought, but a glimmer of hope sparked. At least I overheard the most important information. He turned and shouted, Sedina, report everything I just told you to the boss immediately. I have to go. Sedina startled and replied, okay, Hans. In the World Tree research area, 3 fallen enemies lay prostrate before them. Benamor exhaled. Ha, we managed to defeat them in time. Ludger replied calmly, I know. They're far stronger than the typical Liberation Army members. Beside Chris, a gigantic magical flower used its vines to constrict a defeated enemy. But this bothered him slightly because using it consumed a lot of mana. Behind them, Bellaluna's eyes sparkled like stars as she admired. That magic tree is so cool. It suits you so well, which made him blush with embarrassment. Ludger watched the two giggle and sighed at the lack of surprises. At that moment, his communicator vibrated. Hans was calling. He answered, but the signal was patchy. He barely heard. Chimera. Detected. Can't. More. Central chamber. Special specimen. Ludger caught the key words. If there truly was a special specimen, then we must hurry. Suddenly, a surge of black energy streaked past. He startled and shouted, Professor Kreis. From behind Chris, a shadow leapt up. He whirled around in shock, unable to react in time. But then a purple slash tore through the air, slicing the attacker in two. The one who struck was none other than Commander Tarina Lionhowl. The strike team reunited with the analysis team. Casey and Tarina stepped forward. Tarina offered a reluctant greeting, and Benamor replied gratefully, Thank you. Thanks to you we survived. By the way, did you notice those corpses starting to move again? Casey scanned the area. Yes, we just fought them. Many assumed dead have deformed and lunged to attack. They must have combined Chimera research agents with the Dark Mage's summoning art. But only a few samples can do that. It still seems incomplete. But then she shifted focus, her suspicious gaze landing on Bellaluna. Who is the person behind you? The analysis team only has 2 people. Bellaluna listened, terrified, stammering, sweat pouring like a stream. I. Benamor stepped forward to block and quickly explained. She aim recommended by the first princess as an expert, here to assist with more accurate analysis. Bellaluna nodded nervously in rapid agreement. Tarina frowned. During my time serving His Highness, I've never seen him do this. But he has many secrets. So I'm not all that surprised. She accepted the explanation for now. Ludger exhaled in relief. Good thing he spoke up. If I had explained it, it probably would have sounded more suspicious. Casey glanced over, saw Ludger calm, then turned away. She told herself, no, this is not the time. We need to deal with the situation first. Tarina asked further. So, what information have you gathered here? They quickly exchanged findings. Tarina analyzed seriously. If that's the power of a demon, then the reason the specimens look like monsters is clear. Casey was stunned too. I didn't expect demonic power to exist right beneath this sewer system. Ludger urged. Indeed. The Liberation Army and the Dark Mages are planning something that uses both the World Tree and demons. Some squads have likely already encountered them. We should move. Meanwhile, a Dark Mage erected a brilliant green magical shield to withstand the fierce assault. Veronica faced the leader, Andrei Simov, directly. She unleashed successive strikes, but they were all blocked. The subordinates panicked, but Andrei remained calm and reassured them. Do not worry about me. I will buy as much time as possible. Then he shouted orders. Do everything you must to ensure level 3 is completed. Behind him, the scientists hurriedly worked. Veronica watched him. The thin layer of ice encasing his hand began to crack, and around him a honeycomb, patterned magic mesh protected him. She shuddered slightly. This cold was bites to the bone. Has he infused his magic with ice? But if so, he must endure the same temperature. She realized. He has likely grafted frozen steel from the frigid north into his body to increase endurance. She lunged forward with her sword. Behind him were hidden vials filled with colorful reagents. He knew this action could endanger himself as well. Suddenly, Phaetus darted sideways, casting a spell and delivering a spiraling slash that cut the air, striking straight into the opponent's head and sending his blood spraying. Andrei lurched back, fell, and groaned in pain. Test tubes clattered and shattered across the tiled floor. Veronica exclaimed loudly, Excellent, Lord Phaetus. Now destroy the specimen in the middle. Phaetus shot toward the containment tank. The subordinates immediately formed a line to block him, shouting, Use everything to stop him. Suddenly, a strong gust hit from behind. Phaetus startled and spun around. A bulky creature lunged out and delivered an enormous punch. He dodged in time but was still flung aside. Andrei staggered to his feet amid 3 newly formed monsters, coughing laugh. Your skill is impressive, but that's not enough to kill me. My body has now surpassed human limits. Phaetus gritted his teeth. Regenerative ability. And these creatures? Andrei coldly offered his mad rationale. Don't you think that despising these small differences is holding back humanity's evolution? From above, Veronica dove down, swinging her blade. A blue ice light tore the air, aimed straight at Andrei. The bulky monster raised a hand and neatly blocked each of Veronica's strikes. Suddenly, an invisible pressure surge erupted and knocked her back. Veronica panted, astonished that it had blocked her magic. With bare hands, her gaze swept over the line of level 3 specimens ahead. The ice encasing their arms was cracking and breaking. Behind them, Andrei looked up, excitement in his voice. These specimens were made to withstand every form of attack. You could say they are proof of proper evolution. This is the glory of life. It is what humanity must strive for and develop. He remained madly in love with his inventions. Never burned, never frostbitten. Any wound could be regenerated. As we advance, even incurable diseases. But a boom cut him off. The entire room shook. A high-level specimen, supposedly invincible, collapsed with a heavy thud. Andre gaped in horror. What? Just one strike? It hasn't even had time to regenerate. He then realized in panic. That is, Iron faced Lutheron. A giant warrior 3 times the size of a normal man appeared amid surging mana. His gaze was as sharp as steel. You've talked enough. Lutheron raised his hand and initiated irregular magic, an ancient power that recreated the might of legendary heroes, legendary regeneration, origin magic. Andre gritted his teeth and backed away. So there's no other way. He pulled out a syringe filled with dark purple liquid and plunged it into his chest. Andre's body convulsed. His skin turned a gloomy purple, veins bulging like roots, and he screamed in agony. A cataclysmic explosion roared. Heat and mana erupted violently, blowing everything around apart. He raised his hands high as brilliant golden lights flared blindingly. They converged around him, forming a gigantic 6-realm magic circle at his feet. Magic was unleashed. A massive golden beam surged up and transformed into a colossal heavenly stone whale, plummeting like thunder straight at Lutheron. The terrifying pressure forced everyone to fall back. Phasius stood outside and shouted anxiously, El Lutheron, are you okay? Lutheran wrapped his body in mana, avoided the killing blow, and barely replied, I'm fine. Andre, mad, stood at the head of the monsters, arms outstretched in self-satisfaction. Behold the power of the demon, even diluted, it's unimaginably strong. The armor on Lutheron's face began to crack, revealing a tanned visage with animal ears and blazing golden eyes. Phasius stared in shock. Lutheron, you. Andre sneered wildly. Ah, I see, that's why you hide your face. No wonder I smelled a monster. Now, fight each other without holding back. Lutheron gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing with fire. They collided like thunder and lightning, steel and mana interweaving. The bulky monsters were felled and lay sprawled around. Phasius took a blow and was hurled far away. Andre laughed savagely and said confidently, Haha, so this is how it feels to face a band of skilled warriors. None of you have revealed a fatal weakness. Phasius gritted his teeth, his mind reeling. Damn. I can withstand his strength, but that dark oscillation, the closer it gets, the more it disorients me. He thought quietly, what a pity. A genius who once contributed to modern medicine. So what drove him into darkness? Above, Lutheran summoned an ancient hero, unleashing thunderous strikes downward. From behind, another team appeared, shouting, Sorry we're late. I'll help right away. With that, Terina rushed in, launching a fierce chain of sword spells. Andre leapt high to dodge, then counterattacked with a barrage of spell beams like rain. More people? Fine. Keep attacking me. Just buy time until the specimen is complete. But suddenly, a blast erupted at the rear where the tank hadn't exploded. He spun around in shocked disbelief. Casey grinned mischievously and advanced. Perfect. We arrived just in time, exactly as planned. Casey appeared, her body wrapped in spiraling magical water. Beside her, Ludger stood proudly. The entrance was impressive. Casey laughed and said, Now destroy the experimental specimen they're frantically guarding. Ludger said coldly, I'll handle the specimen, so stop anyone who interferes. Commander Andre of the Liberation Army roared, Stop them at all costs. He hadn't expected them to take that opportunity to attack. Yes, sir, the subordinates replied in unison. Casey swung her arm and blue water magic shot out to strike them. Meanwhile, Ludger cast his magic, and a magical circle flared brilliantly. Andre lunged forward, but before he could reach them, his body was bound tightly in a vortex of swirling water. A beam of light pierced straight through the experiment tank. The sound of shattering glass rang out, then fell silent. The red liquid inside poured out. The hulking monster fell face. First, its chest ruptured by a deep hole. Andre whimpered, trembling, No, no, the masterpiece of my life. Then he whipped his gaze toward Ludger with hatred. You, how dare you, you will pay. But before Ludger could respond, they froze. Wait, it's rising up. Amid the rubble, the giant specimen slowly pulled itself upright, naked, muscles taut as stone. Its expression was eerily blank. It let out a bone-rattling roar as dense black mana swelled throughout the laboratory. The air was suffocating. The nightmare had only just begun. Ludger gritted his teeth and looked up. Just a pure mana release. And the power is this strong? Now I understand why Master was concerned about it. Andre burst into a mad laugh. his grin twisted and chilling. Ha ha, yes, this power. My masterpiece is finally complete. Suddenly, a warrior in the team stepped forward, trembling. Wait, could it be? Luitpold, is that you? Veronica froze. You know him? The man answered. Yes, we both served in the army. I heard that after he deserted, he became an officer in the Liberation Army. The experimental specimen stood still, its breath exhaling white puffs of steam. Its face was expressionless. Luitpold. Yes, that is my name, but a second later his eyes widened. Veins of red blood appeared in them. Or am I not? Who am I? Names. Keep dancing in my head. Luitpold? David? Gerard? Yenna? He clutched his head, trembling madly. Andre understood immediately. Implanting multiple mages' souls had scrambled his memories, but that might be for the best, easier to control. Then he said calmly, Number 3. You are the experimental specimen called Number 3. Luitpold repeated drowsily. Number 3. Andre continued. Yes, and I am your master, Andre. But it doesn't matter who you are. Aren't you hungry? The man's eyes glared down. Oh, right. It doesn't matter who I am. Right now, I need to deal with this hunger. Andre pointed at the enemies before them, urging, Then, Number 3, see those prey? Devour them. But Luitpold lunged, and the first prey was Andre. He hoisted his creator up and growled, You look the tastiest. You'll be the first meal. His hand pierced Andre's body, intending to siphon all of his demonic and mana power. A blinding flash of light startled him. Ludger stood firm, staff aimed at him. Do you think we're stupid enough to wait for an enemy to grow stronger? Then he turned and shouted, Casey, are you ready? Casey raised her umbrella, water gathering around it. She replied confidently, Of course, there's plenty of water down here to use. A giant water monster formed and rushed straight at Number 3. Andre crawled away, panicking, afraid of being swept up. Casey hurled the umbrella forward. 1,000-ton water vortex as if struck from the heavens was created. It roared like a storm, aimed directly at Number 3. He leapt up, arms wide, bursting with fury. A crimson magic enveloped his body, countering the giant water fist. Casey gritted her teeth in astonishment. He stood firm against the immense pressure, with no sign of drowning. Does he not need to breathe? Ludger quickly turned and called to Veronica. She understood. She sliced repeatedly, magic blades cutting into the surging water. They all realized. They were trying to lock Number 3 in ice. But Lotheron knew that amount of mana alone wasn't enough. Benimore shouted, Agnone using ice magic. Give me a hand. Bellaluna added, I brought some freezing solution too. Everyone coordinated, pouring all their mana into the attack. Before them, the water suddenly froze, solidifying into a massive block of ice. Ludger exhaled. He believed this ice prison was thick enough that even a demon couldn't break free. But deep within, the eyes of specimen Number 3 flashed with a blinding light. Dark mana exploded, generating tremendous pressure that shook the ground and forced everyone to step back. A shockwave blast struck, causing everyone to endure an immense compression. Benimore caught Bellaluna in time and pulled her aside to dodge. Ludger shielded Casey. She stood behind him, screaming in panic. The moment the dark mana wave hit, Casey was stunned and immersed in an illusion. Everything before her plunged into darkness. Casey couldn't see a thing. She found herself in a bleak, lonely place. Where am I? I can't see anything. Suddenly, she was stunned by a barrage of insults around her. There's the imposter. You Lear. A shadowy crowd appeared, their voices ringing with fury. What genius detective? She accused an innocent person just for her own gain. And the person she called a criminal is the one who punished the real villain. The curses struck Casey's mind like cutting blades. Her body and heart sank into darkness while the jeers continued. And you dare preach about justice? In reality, she was curled on the floor trembling and muttering. Her umbrella lay fallen beside her. From afar, the specimen carrying a vast well of dark mana slowly advanced. At his feet, everyone writhed within hallucinations, created by their own fears and guilt. He stopped before Casey and sneered, What a disappointment. I stirred their minds a little, and they all collapsed. Even those praised as geniuses are empty shells inside. He threw his head back and laughed loudly, the sound echoing through the space. Ahahaha. The power of demons is truly magnificent. He glanced at the motionless figures on the floor. If I were my former self, defeating them would have cost me my life. But now, I can do it as easily as breaking a branch. He couldn't contain his excitement. But this is only the beginning. With this power, I will create a new order for the world. Number 3 stepped closer to Casey and raised his hand. And to do that, first I will absorb all your power. Suddenly, a shout rang out from behind, stopping him in his tracks. There. Andre knelt, clutching his head and trembling as he begged. Luitpold, please, stop. I can't bear to see it anymore. Number 3 faltered, sneering. So you're still conscious. Looks like you've injected demonic power into yourself too, huh? He ignored Casey and moved toward Andre. Good. Then I'll begin by absorbing you. We share the same kind of power. Tell me, what did you see that caused you such torment, Andre? The man about to be harmed still clutched his head, kneeling and trembling in fear, offering no answer. Number 3 curled his lips, revealing sharp teeth. No need to tell me. I can feel everything. The moment your beloved daughter died, wasn't it? Number 3 continued probing Andre's painful past. Andre sank into memory. Back then his little daughter was still alive but afflicted with an incurable disease. His wife had already died, so he couldn't bear to lose his poor child. In the end, he set aside forbidden rules and began experimenting on humans, and eventually he found a solution. But his little daughter didn't live long enough for that moment. It was all too late. What he received was disgrace, stripped of every honor he'd earned and pursued by the Empire. Number 3 looked at him with feigned pity. How pitiful. A powerless father watching his daughter die. Andre screamed, "Shut up. I know that pain won't bring her back." He panted, trying to justify himself. I only wanted to save people, so no one else would have to suffer as I did. Number 3 leaned down, his voice full of sarcasm. And to do that, how many people did you sacrifice for your experiments? Do you really think that was justified? Then he raised his hand ready to finish Andre. Andre's eyes widened in horror as the massive hands slowly closed in. Suddenly, a cold voice called from behind, "Sorry, but that's not going to happen." Number 3 startled and turned, incredulous. How could you quise? Ludger stood there upright. His eyes were cold as steel. A confidence radiated from him that left the two stunned. You're playing dumb, aren't you? He didn't answer at once. He slowly drew something from his coat and then softly replied, "No. I only just woke up." After realizing all of that was an illusion, he brought the pipe to his lips, voice icy cold. "The memories you showed me were terrible. That's why I'm in such a foul mood now. Still, I should thank you for knocking them out. That means fewer witnesses." At that, Number 3's eyes widened in panic. Ludger's face was mercilessly cold. He inhaled from the pipe, then exhaled a dense magical smoke. "In return, I'll give you a special performance. Oh, for real magic." Meanwhile, at the temporary secret base in Lindebrunn, after lying motionless on the sofa for a long time, Grandere finally spoke. "It seems you didn't come here after finishing everything. Do you have something to tell me?" Hans swallowed and stared at the girl lying there. At last, he mustered the courage to speak. "I searched underground as you suggested. I found that the dark mages were conducting experiments with demon power." Grandere remained still and replied calmly, I gave you a hint, yet you found it quickly. So?" Hans panicked. "My boss went down there to stop them. He may be strong, but he can't stand against demon power. You're really not going to help him." Grandere kept her eyes closed, giving no answer and showing no sign of movement. Then she gave an answer Hans could hardly believe. "I don't know how long you've been with my student, but it seems you still don't know much about him." She opened her blazing red eyes, expressionless. "The reason I won't help him is because I don't need to bother." Back on the battlefield, Ludger rose into the air and extended his hand. A flash of blue magic lit up as he focused high-intensity mana. Rays of magic shot out, aiming straight at Number 3. On his huge body, demonic faces appeared, screaming as if trapped beneath churning muscles. Number 3 hissed and raised a shield that enveloped his entire body to block the attack. But suddenly, from the ground, tree roots writhed upward and coiled around his body like giant snakes. He was stunned and strained to break free. Before he could react, the next attack launched. Multiple elements combined and exploded in a brilliant flash. Number 3 was struck, his whole body convulsing as he screamed in pain. "You bastard! How many elements can you use?" he shouted, voice a mix of astonishment and rage. From afar, Ludger remained cold, hands clasped before his chest. Pale purple magic circles swirled around him, spreading relentlessly. Then an invisible force slammed Number 3 into the ground. He howled in desperation. What is this? I can't move. Is that a ceiling sign?" He stared up at Ludger, who still hovered in midair, radiating overwhelming authority. Andre watched the entire battle in astonishment. He completely overwhelms Luitpold? How long has he been hiding that skill? Number 3 was pinned to the floor, sinking into despair and fury as he realized his innate power was inferior. Though he carried demonic power, his physical form limited his authority. He looked at Ludger with eyes full of envy. Hatred turned to madness. Not only did he want to kill him, He wanted Ludger to kneel and beg for death. Suddenly, number three's body convulsed violently, his joints seeming to lose sensation. He screamed in excruciating pain. From above, the world tree's roots melted, dripping thick black liquid. They merged with the dark ichor gushing from Luitpold, forming a vast viscous black pool. Ludger stared in astonishment as a grotesque form emerged from the black pool drawn from the world tree's roots. A giant, warped demonic shape with 4 arms and a twisted torso gradually took shape. The monster grew larger and more defined by the moment, even though they'd thoroughly inspected the world tree before and found nothing unusual. So why? On the other side, Andre was collapsing. Dark streaks of ichor flowed from his body. From above, Ludger calmly observed and asked, "Do you know what's happening?" Andre forced a laugh, voice weak. "You ask me after we've just fought for our lives a few minutes ago." Well, maybe he can't control the demon's power. He explained that the creature reacts to all surrounding negative emotions, fear and hatred, which cause its power to grow. This was the result of the merger between demonic power and the world tree, a force they thought they could control but which actually nullified itself. The demonic power now acted on its own will, even devouring the mind of specimen number 3, which left Ludger stunned. From beneath number 3's body, a surge of black magic shot upward, flinging Ludger backward. The overwhelming force prevented him from stabilizing his body. The world tree's roots swelled larger and larger. Then they burst, spewing a torrent of black ichor. It flowed into the pool on the floor. Luitpold rose from the black pool, naked. He let out a horrific scream, the scream of utter torment, as he was consumed by the power he sought. When the last drops fell, and a true demon appeared. Its dark wings radiated immense mana as it slowly advanced. Andre now trembled in abject terror at the sight before him. He whispered in fear, that is, a real demon." Ludger ground his teeth and stared straight at the demon. Before him stood a demon, a hulking, black, gray body veined with red like molten fire running along its flesh. Black horns and broad bat-like wings spread wide. It took heavy steps across the floor. It lifted its head. Its yellow eyes flashed. "At last, I am free." The heavy footsteps echoed through the ruined space. The demon did not rush to attack, but regarded Ludger with a smug gaze. After an age of endless suffering, it had finally escaped from within that monstrous world tree. Ludger ground his teeth, feeling the alloy of misfortune. First fighting an experiment granted demonic power, now facing a real, truly enraged demon. Terrible luck indeed. The demon chuckled in a hoarse voice. "You needn't be so wary. Unlike the host of this body, I don't intend to fight you. Besides, you seem to possess tremendous power, so fighting you brings me no benefit." Ludger stared at it, suspicion in his eyes. "But you used a human to resurrect yourself." The demon replied coldly, "I merely collect the price for daring to borrow my power." It pointed at Andre, still slumped on the floor. "It is humanity that caused this disaster, not me." Ludger fell silent, watching. No sign of hostility. Perhaps the records of the Luminis church have been distorted. Ludger asked again, "So what do you intend to do now?" The demon curled its lip. "I have a mission assigned long ago, and I must see it through. Each of us has a task to fulfill." Ludger frowned, trying to grasp the meaning. "Us? So he's not alone." The demon answered in a didactic tone. "There are those who betray, and those who remain loyal. I belong to the latter." Ludger was stunned. "What do you mean?" Before he could finish, a pitch-black surge of dark magic shot out like lightning. The magic seemed intent on devouring its prey, streaking straight toward unconscious Casey. Boom, the ground exploded, black smoke rising. The blast created a deep crater in the earth. Mana converged and swirled like a dark black orb. Ludger managed to grab Casey and leap away from the blast's center. He gritted his teeth. "I thought you said you didn't want to fight?" Ludger panted, realizing the danger they'd just escaped. He hadn't sensed any intent to kill had he reacted even a moment slower. The outcome would have been dire. The demon sneered. "Exactly. I don't want to fight you." Ludger pointed at Casey slumped on the ground. "And yet you tried to kill my comrade." The demon blinked, pondering. Isn't something off about that? Finally he understood. At least the creature hadn't lied to him. The demon gave off no murderous intent. He was simply following his mission. Killing without emotion, that was the truly terrifying thing. Benella had just come to and witnessed it. She worried though their boss was immune to the herb's toxin, growing tenfold stronger. Would he really be okay? A dense purple magical fog began to coil violently around Ludger, exerting pressure like giant waves crashing through the air. To deal with a demon like this, he had to raise his power to the maximum. Ludger drew in a breath and exhaled a purple magical smoke. How foolish. I once thought I could reason with a demon. Without hesitation, he donned the beaked mask and activated magic augmentation. Amid the hazy purple smoke, His tall, enigmatic form became clearly defined. My assessment of you is complete. Now, it's time to treat you. Meanwhile, Casey trembled within the illusion the demon had created. A cold voice echoed around her. Casey, I am truly disappointed in you. She knelt on the floor, frantically pleading. Gee, grandfather, please listen to me. I. Her grandfather's voice remained stern and unyielding. I asked you to make this world a fairer place. Casey choked up. Yes, and I have been striving for justice, as you said. A deep, hoarse, skeptical sound echoed. Really? Behind Casey, a man in a black cloak collapsed, clutching a child. His voice rang with unbearable pain. Did you truly live with justice in your heart? Casey widened her eyes in horror and turned her head. The man remained silent in the shadows. She trembled, propping herself up to stand, but an invisible shove hurled her off a sheer cliff. He was right. I have no right to justify myself. Casey fell into despair, surrendering everything. Forget the plots against the kingdom. I can't even uncover the truth behind a child's death. How can I claim to stand for justice? Or to be a brilliant detective? I'm just a fraud, building a reputation on my own mistakes. It would be better for everyone if I disappeared. Just then, a warm hand suddenly reached out and gripped hers. The strong pull jolted her awake from the spiral of tormenting thoughts. The figure held her hand tight. A voice sounded like a proclamation. You've won, Casey Selmore. This is a victory for justice. The illusion began to shatter. The mysterious figure still held her hand, holding on to the last spark of hope inside her. Casey whispered softly, yes. He told her that even though he knew everything, she snapped awake in utter terror. The battle reached its peak as Ludger stood in front, unleashing magic to block the demon's attack from above. Casey trembled, panicked, but finally regained consciousness. She forced herself to stand, legs shaking from exhaustion and fear. I want to fight too. This time, justice will prevail, Ludger replied. He raised his hand, magic spreading to envelop everyone. Rest now. Wait. Casey called softly, but she was bound tight. The demon watched and laughed with delight. I've seen you use these before, but this is truly impressive. A product of darkness, yes? I suppose mages these days have such toys. Ludger cut him off coldly. You talk too much. He narrowed his eyes, voice low. I've said enough. Come here, fiend. The demon curled a lip. How amusing. Without hesitation, it lunged in, treating Ludger like a test subject for its power. Either way, you're only delaying me by a day. Fine, I'll use this chance to test my strength. Black magical attacks hurled forward in a storm. Ludger raised a colossal purple barrier. Light flashed as the opposing energies collided. The demon roared, Can you block this too? It unleashed thousands of black magic bolts like bombs, deafening explosions ringing out. Ludger's cloak was shredded, but he stood firm, repelling wave after wave. Attacks kept pounding in, and all he could do was desperately hold the line. For every assault, there was a defense. The struggle still had no end in sight. Andre watched, stunned. Oh my. I didn't expect demons to be this strong. But that man, he's holding his ground. How can a human reach such a level? The demon frowned, growing irritated. But it's time to finish this. It raised its hand, combining the elements of ice and water. Unified magic, collapsing river of ice. A gigantic blue vortex poured down like a waterfall, aimed straight at Ludger. Ludger pressed his hands together. The energy around him exploded. Instantly, the energy transformed into a brilliant golden light. Magical flames rose, coiling around the water vortex and burning everything. The space blazed with a dazzling golden radiance. The demon recoiled in shock, raising a hand to shield its face. Ludger advanced, summoning a giant Buddha statue amid the sea of flames. The demon was taken aback. He chanted, voice resonant, hand thrust forward. Varicana divine diamond fist. The massive hand of light descended with his chant, striking the demon head-on. The demon's instincts warned that the blow was extremely dangerous and it could not be allowed to land. It hastily retreated, determined to pour all its strength into stopping it. But it wasn't enough when the colossal golden hand slammed down. The demon's defenses began to crack. Terrified at being so easily overwhelmed, it realized the situation was growing dire. Before it could escape, it felt binding magic restrain it, rendering its body immobile as golden light enveloped it. It was Andre, casting support magic, sweat pouring down his face. Bound by Andre's magic and crushed by Ludger's power, the demon's dark defenses shattered in pieces. The demon roared in agony. A blinding, violent explosion swept the area. Golden light burned away the darkness, scattering everything. The golden Buddha stood towering amid the sea of flames, lotus petals radiating brilliant light. A final bang rang out. The finishing blow was delivered. In central Lindebrunn, the city shook and explosions from the earth sent citizens into a panicked evacuation, while Tessie and Aiden stood stunned, unsure of what was happening. Amid the fleeing crowd, Arendir ran alongside Lin, urging each other to reach the palace for safety. But seconds later, Lin suddenly clutched her head, collapsed, eyes squeezed shut in severe pain. In the hurried stream of people, Arendir frantically caught her. "Lin, what's wrong?" Lin trembled. My eyes. They hurt so much." Arendir stared at her, his face ashen. She choked back a breath, gasping, "Lin, your eyes." Lin's blue eyes flared, her pupils contracting as if absorbing a massive source of energy. Light spread outward, reflecting the mysterious power from the battle beneath the ground. In the belly of the sewer there was nothing left but a deathly silence. A gigantic handprint was pressed deep into the ground. Dust and steam still billowed thickly from the mouth of the pit. Ludger stood there, his gaze cold as he stared down at the spot where the demon had been. No body. Did that move wipe him out entirely? He turned, his eyes sweeping to Andrei Semov, who was staggering not far away. "But why did you help me at the last moment?" Andrei, exhausted, bent over to look at the huge hole. "I think you're incredible." He lifted his head, eyes blazing with a mad, oddly admiring light. "I never thought you'd be able to face a demon that only exists in books all on your own. You must have been through a lot to have that kind of power at your age." Andrei gave a faint smile, then spoke, soaked in his own warped philosophy. "Have you never felt powerless in the face of something you wanted to protect, or thrown everything into proving you're not wrong, even if the whole world hates you?" Ludger stood silent, offering no answer. Suddenly blood welled at Andrei's mouth. He laughed, bitter. "Ha ha. I think you and I have a lot in common. Maybe that's why I helped you." A violent cough made him stagger, his trembling hand covering his mouth. "Using that much mana, maybe that was the finishing blow for me. I can't take much more." His body hit its limit. The scene before him grew hazy. In that instant, a cold shard of memory rushed back. A child lay motionless beneath a white shroud. Andrei's voice rang out, furious. "You're telling me you tried to save a dead child?" The man answered, voice trembling. I heard that a dark mage could raise the dead." Andrei waved him off and bellowed, "You idiot! That's clearly not the same as bringing someone back to life. Besides, the cause of death was only a fever. How could you be so indifferent as to let the child be neglected to death when a simple fever reducer would have done the trick?" The man remained on his knees, sobbing. "I prayed. They said if you pray to God, he will heal every sickness." Andrei stood stunned. "You prayed?" It was those very chains called God that bound him and stole his daughter. He hated God. They believed God would save them, but how many lives have been crushed simply because the path that could have saved them was blocked in God's name? So he turned to the power of the demon. He was only trying to prove one thing, that people can still rise up, even without God. But in the end he was used, and everything came crashing down. Andrei Semov collapsed, a pool of blood spreading beneath his head. In his last breath he whispered, "Only you, the one who has mastered the demon, can do that. Don't give up." Ludger looked at him and muttered, "Unfortunately, I won't be doing that." At the same time, in the pit where the demon had been defeated, an ear-splitting roar tore through the air. A thick tide of black magic churned and blasted straight up toward the sky. The demon revealed its true form, a giant winged shadow, creature with eyes burning red like embers. "Impossible. Unacceptable. You have destroyed everything." It writhed in furious rage, mingled with pure terror. Ludger watched, his breath still heavy. Cold sweat rolled down his cheek. That stubborn demon wasn't dead yet, but in this state, it couldn't hold on for much longer. Though its body had been smashed to pieces, the demon's will stubbornly clung on. "No, I will not die. If I die, my power will vanish." It frantically searched for an escape. A vessel. "I need a vessel to contain my power. Someone strong like Luitpold, no, at least a body tough enough to endure me." Meanwhile, above ground, Arendir cried out in horror, "Lin, your eyes." Lin froze, bewildered. "What? They're sparkling. What is happening?" Lin was confused. She hadn't noticed the horrifying change on her face. Within her irises, a vague demonic silhouette appeared. "No way. I'm seeing something beneath. This happened before." Her gaze and the demon's met for a moment. A crooked smile cracked across the demon's face, its voice echoing as if through the air. "I found you." Lin froze. A cold chill ran down her spine, and she collapsed in panic. Meanwhile, deep in the sewer, Ludger stood stunned, his eyes flashing with astonishment when he heard the demon roar those words. Then a roar reverberated everywhere. The demon shrieked in madness, as if taking delight in the chaos. Ah ha ha, so they still exist, those cursed scents. A surge of dark energy suddenly burst from the ground. Ludger, still reeling from the herb's side effects, he gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his brow. Damn, the side effects hit faster than I expected, but things were getting worse. The maiden, that's what he meant. On the surface, Arendir panicked when he saw Lin gasping, her whole body trembling with fear. Lin, are you okay? Why are you so terrified? Lin, in a panic, spun around and screamed, Everyone, run. Get away from here right now. From the earth, a massive power erupted. A dead tree shot up through the road, its trunk ringed by a circle of blazing red fire, ripping everything in its path. Atop the tree, the demon rose and stretched itself, and bellowed in a voice full of hatred. Where are you? That cry shook everything. The crowd quickly descended into chaos. Arendir couldn't hold on and collapsed to the ground. Lin, frantic, called out her name. The demon, drunk on savage excitement, lunged forward, jagged teeth bared and eyes blazing like fire. Ha ha ha, there you are. Stand still. I'm coming. Lin stood rooted to the spot, watching the demon approach, so terrified she couldn't even cry out. Suddenly, Flora darted forward like a bolt of lightning. She shoved Lin decisively aside and roared, Get back! Lin was sent sprawling, letting out a weak yelp. Flora turned to face the massive entity. The demon opened its maw, drool flying as it gave out terrifying growls. Flora's hair whipped in the wind, her eyes cold as steel, determination blazing across her face. She looked back at Lin. Hey, this is going to pay back my debt to you. Lin, still in shock, screamed, Flora. Before she could react any further, a thick, heavy black smoke lunged in, snatching Flora and wrapping her up in a whirlpool of dark energy. Flora trembled inside the smoke, engulfed by a strange, unnatural force. Lin sprang up, her face drained pale. Flora, are you okay? But then she froze, trembling, as a savage, deranged laugh rang out. Gahaha. Before Lin, it was no longer Flora, but something else, a grotesque entity that had seized her body. The creature hovered amid strands of dark energy. What is this, child? It should have been crushed by me instantly, and yet it held on? A stable host like Luitpold, with no need for reworking. He threw his arms wide, tilted his head back and laughed maniacally. Oh, the feeling. To sense mana pouring out like this? Absolutely delightful to the point of madness. It's as if that precious gem had been lying in the sand, waiting for me to come and snatch it. It turned its head to look at Lin, who was trembling, and sneered, Oh my, I'm so delighted I forgot you existed. Lin, panicking, stammered, Who are you? What happened to Flora? The demon kept smiling, taunting, Funny, why don't holy maidens these days have bodyguards? Besides, your power hasn't fully awakened yet. Lin screamed in anger, What did you do to Flora? It scoffed, Don't worry. Her true self is still fighting inside. But I suppose, it's only a matter of time. Then it turned back to Lin, the smile growing more venomous. But I don't think you should be worrying about anyone else right now. Do you honestly think I'd pass up the chance to finish off a holy maiden early? Immediately, it raised its hand and a stream of dark energy shot straight toward Lin, making her scream in terror. What are you? But before it could hit, Ludger dashed in to stop the attack. Seeing him, Lin cried out with relief. Professor Ludger. Ludger stood there, calm but resolute. You're not hurt, are you? Lin stammered, her face still pale with fear. No, but Flora took the hit for me, and… Ludger cut her off decisively. Don't worry, I'll save her. But first you need to get as far away from here as you can. Lin nodded trustingly, then turned and ran, looking back as she fled. Be careful. Ludger turned to face the demon possessing Flora. The demon sneered mockingly. Oh my, the shiny armored knight has come to make a dramatic rescue. How enviable. Ludger replied coldly. Your tone's getting even more annoying. It laughed with obvious delight. See, I have to act the part for this body. Ha ha. Now, what are you going to do with this girl? Shadowy bands wound tightly around Flora. The demon taunted, You won't dare kill me, will you? If you kill me, she'll die too. Ludger answered decisively, eyes steady. If I must, I will. The demon burst out laughing and lashed out with a blast of dark energy. Ha! Cruel professor. Strike me, if you dare. A whirl of darkness wrapped around Ludger, pulling him into a sphere hovering above the ground. The demon hissed, I am on a completely different level. At the same time, on the roof of a nearby building, Mandalina blinked, shielding her eyes, and blurted, "Oh my God, I only came to check on the evacuation. Why does this place smell so ominous? It wouldn't be right to just walk away. What if things get worse?" She looked down at where the dark energy was spreading. The sheer horror left her speechless for a few seconds. Then she spun around, threw up a hand, and declared in a booming voice, "All right, I'll be back later. I've never been here. Everything ends the moment I arrive. Ha ha ha." She was about to laugh and make a run for it when she suddenly froze, eyes wide. She saw two little figures lying motionless on the ground. Aiden? Mandalina grabbed her head in a fluster. She'd literally been about to bolt. She jumped down, landed beside Aiden, bent over and shook him hard. "Hey, get up. You were the one who scolded me for dozing off. So why are you now sprawled out in the middle of the road?" Aiden was shaken until his eyes rolled and he felt like he might vomit. He mumbled, "Master." Mandalina hauled him to his feet, hurried and annoyed. "Come on, Aiden. We'll talk later. And now we're going in there," Mandalina said, pointing toward the center of the battlefield. After being swallowed by the dense vortex of black magic, Ludger fell into an inky void. Around him, cold, terrifying whispers slithered like snakes. "Why are you still alive? You didn't save me. You destroyed everything." Ludger's steps faltered. A scream of furious accusation tore through the darkness. "If you had never appeared." Before him, the image of a pale boy appeared trembling, his eyes shattered with pain. "Sir, why didn't you save Celesy?" Ludger clenched his teeth and shut his eyes in pain. A surge of will burst forth. His hand tore the space apart, sweeping the boy's image away. He lifted his head. In the distance, the demon wearing Flora's guise watched silently. Its voice rang out with no shape but with an utterly mocking smile. "I must admit, you are resilient. Still standing after such psychological blows? But you won't hold out for long." Ludger ground his teeth. He felt each step grow heavier, as if treading on his own soul. He knew he couldn't close the distance with the enemy. The demon was eroding his mind, forcing him to hurry. The demon curled its lip, a twisted smile full of contempt. "How touching to see you pour yourself out for this child. But do you remember? Before, you paid no heed to her fate." Ludger froze. "What are you talking about?" The demon quietly placed a hand on Flora's chest. Its voice rumbled as if speaking for the girl's resentment. "I feel it clearly. This girl despises the whole world. She has talent, ambition, but no one ever acknowledged her. Born into a noble family, yet scorned for being illegitimate. Envied, resented for surpassing others. Amid all that, your reaction when you fix an infraction made her believe you were different. But then what did you do? Did you ever worry about her, ever care for her feelings? In the end, you're no different from those she once despised." Basara's manic laughter rang harshly. Flora's golden eyes flared, cold and devoid of humanity. "If from the start you intended to act like that, then don't raise her hopes so high." The demon's voice turned seductive, like a blade driven deep. "Even without me, this girl had already given up. Now she is the happiest one, because only I am the one who truly understands her." The demon raised its hand. A wave of black chi coiled soft but terrifyingly. "Human or demon, what of it? If both God and man turn away, then take the demon's hand." It reached out, its tone both inviting and contemptuous. "I'll give you a chance for the sake of this child. Go, far away. Never appear before me again. A simple pact. Do you accept?" Ludger stood silent. Darkness masked his face. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. But before he could finish, boom! A massive explosion thundered outside the energy sphere. A pillar of cerulean light pierced the black chi, bursting like thunder. The demon recoiled, spinning in horror. "What?" Ludger froze, his gaze toward the outside. Through the smoke and dust, he saw two figures kneeling, their hands stretched toward him. Aiden? Mandalina? He realized they were breaking the barrier. Anti-mana light spread, piercing each layer of black chi around him. Anti-magic. With that external support, Ludger immediately seized the opportunity. He shot into the air like a lightning bolt. His hand swept and seized the head of the entity possessing Flora. A blood-curdling scream rang out. The demon's golden eyes widened in terror. Ludger held fast, uttered an incantation. Each word hammered into the void. Thrust him into hell. Divina virtute and infernum detrude. Space quaked. Giant astrological circles blazed dazzlingly, spinning around the two of them. The demon convulsed. Ludger's voice echoed like a prayer tearing the darkness. Exorcism, exorcismos. Blue light erupted violently, engulfing them both. In that moment, the door to Flora's mind opened. a gateway leading to the deepest part of her soul. He stepped in. A night garden stretched before him, silent and eerie. Silver moonlight fell on carpets of blood-red flowers, swaying in the wind. In the center, a little girl sat curled up, her shoulders trembling in silence. "Flora," Ludger whispered. She looked up, eyes moist but cold. "Why are you here, teacher? It's too late to pretend you care about me." Ludger was silent. Moonlight shone on the girl's face, beautiful but full of wounds. "I know everything." Flora smiled faintly. "You never cared about me. To you, I'm just a student with potential, nothing more." Ludger tightened his fist. His voice lowered, sincere and pained. "I understand how you feel, Flora. I've been through similar things." Flora suddenly screamed, her voice choking with rage. "Don't lie to me." She leapt up, eyes blazing, pointing at him. "Have you ever been cast out by your family? Ever trampled, discriminated against, isolated for being different? None of that happened to you. So what do you know about me?" Suddenly, the demon appeared behind her, its amused laughter ringing out. "Indeed, lying is terrible. Don't you dare insult Flora." Ludger turned his head slightly, his gaze calm but cold. The demon tilted its head, mocking. "Amazing. You can delve so deep into the subconscious. But sadly, Flora is rejecting you." It laughed. Its body began to deform, swelling muscles bulging. "Anyway, this is even better. You have offered yourself to me right here in the spirit world. Here, I can unleash my true power." Space trembled. The demon roared, transforming into a colossal entity, its yellow eyes burning. "I will erase you without a trace." From the demon's body, thousands of magical tentacles shot forth, pointing straight at him. An earth-shattering explosion rang out as the tentacles struck Ludger's shield. Frictional sparks burst, tearing space apart. "Ha ha ha, you're still stubborn. But can you withstand this blow?" A pitch-black surge of energy suddenly diverted, firing straight toward Flora. Ludger froze, jolted, and turned. "Flora." He lunged up, using his body to fully block the attack. A violent explosion thundered. Flora trembled, stunned by the teacher before her, smoke billowing. "Professor," Ludger's voice weak but steady. "Flora, you must have wished for a savior. Someone to step forward, reach out, pull you up from the ground." He looked up at her, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. "You hoped that person would be me, didn't you?" Flora froze, her eyes widening. Ludger clenched his fist, his tone stern. "But seeking rescue from others is futile. What you need is the will to move forward on your own." Ludger turned, each word echoing through the still space. "Do you know how a lotus blooms? It grows out of filthy mud, yet rises, beautiful, unstained." Flora looked up, her eyes trembling. "Professor, you're back." The scene from long ago flooded back. Her mother, who once stood between her and her cruel father. The piece of searing red-hot iron, the sizzle of burning flesh. The acrid smell of char filled the room. She jolted back to reality. Ludger still stood there, his back seared, blood flowing, smoke rising. On that scorched skin, a mysterious mark appeared. "I hope you will walk a path as beautiful as the lotus." Flora trembled, staring at the mark, the design. "Even you, teacher?" She bowed her head, tears falling drop by drop. She realized she was wrong. She hadn't even considered that, and yet she had blamed him, thinking he could never understand. Ludger firmly comforted her. "Don't cry, Flora. Answer me, do you want to leave this place, or stay here forever? If you want to leave and not give up, I will do everything I can to help you." Flora looked up, her eyes bright with hope. Moved to tears, Flora wiped her eyes and gradually regained her resolve. Flora looked at Ludger with determined eyes. "Please help me get out of here, Professor." Ludger smiled, confident. "Ludger, as you wish." The demon roared and lunged. "Just try if you can." Ludger raised his hand. Blue energy exploded violently. "You are not the only one with the advantage in this spirit world, Basara. Here, the source of power is not mana, but imagination." Thousands of blue lightning bolts shot out, weaving together like a net. The demon screamed in panic, utterly overwhelmed by the surreal energy. Ludger advanced, light radiating from him like a star. He said, "Here, I am not bound by limits. If my hands cannot be restored, as long as my mind remains intact, I am immortal." A colossal surge of electricity shot from his hands, spiraling fiercely, tearing the sky apart. The demon trembled. "Am I afraid? An ordinary human?" He leapt up and struck. The electric current poured its full force into the demon, who could only stand there dumbfounded. Flora watched in shock. The electricity flowed in roaring streams of blinding light. Ludger, look close, Flora. The spell I am about to use is different from everything you've seen in class. The currents grew ever fiercer, operating in tight coordination like technological conduits, each gear meshing perfectly. Ludger swung his arm. Around him it glittered and shone like the galactic stream. The demon widened its eyes in disbelief and panic, wondering what this power was and how a human could wield godlike strength. The light closed in. Basara screamed in despair, his voice breaking. Ah, my rigid god, you've been rejected by Luminous for your sins. Save me now, your devout disciple. But it was too late. The blue light engulfed him. A blinding explosion rang out. The black energy sphere outside cracked, slits of light piercing the layers of dark chi. Outside, Aiden and Mandalina saw the pillar of light surge up, terrified. Look, master. And then boo-oo-oo-om. The sphere shattered. A colossal blue pillar of light shot straight into the sky, tearing across the night. Smoke and dust filled the air. The dust gradually cleared, and the sky returned to blue. Basara's body turned to ash, and he let out a hoarse, bitter laugh. Ha ha ha. How ironic. Humans always assume the right to judge. Anything not from heaven is by default a demon. He stared straight at Ludger, his laugh turning into a venomous groan. And yet now, it is a human who wields heretical power. Ridiculous. Perhaps my defeat was inevitable, Ludger said coldly, cutting him off. Are you finished? Don't waste my time. Be gone. Before fully dissolving, Basara's voice deepened and echoed, Ha ha. Let me say one last thing. When I possessed that girl's body, I sensed, through the demon's senses, that there are still many like me, the ones you call demons. Be careful. Of the apostles. He paused, speaking with implication. Apostles and demons are different. If one day they cooperate, this world will no longer be under your control. Basara let out one last mad laugh. How delightful to imagine your thorny future. What a pity. I won't be here to see it. Ah ha ha ha. The final gust of wind swept away his ashes. Ludger tightened his hold on Flora, standing motionless in midair. He was silent, his strength spent, his face darkened with exhaustion. Flora clutched him to support him, her voice trembling. Professor? There was no answer. Ludger's body slumped, unconscious. The two fell freely, plunging toward the ground. Flora only had time to cry out in alarm. Below, Aiden and Mandalina were racing over. Aiden shouted in panic. Triple A, Professor Ludger, Flora. Mandalina chased after them, muttering irritably, Honestly, I knew it. I shouldn't have gotten involved. Nothing but trouble. Just as the two were about to hit the ground, Mandalina leapt up, catching them both and landing safely. After a time of unconsciousness, Ludger slowly opened his eyes. He had regained consciousness. He was lying on a large bed. The soft light and the room's quiet, minimalist air made Ludger realize it was likely an infirmary. Sitting up, he rubbed his forehead. Fatigue still weighed heavily in his head. He noticed a figure sitting in the corner. Ludger's voice was hoarse, laced with sarcasm. I didn't expect you'd be idle enough to visit in the middle of the night. Zero order. The man in a smart black suit, wearing a half mask, smiled slightly. Oh my, I haven't even greeted you yet. How rude of me, Ludger Cherish. Ludger sat up straight, eyes cold. So you really knew I wasn't John Doe? Zero Order chuckled. Haha, no surprise. Didn't you think I knew long ago? Ludger replied slowly, his tone icy. Then why let me live? What do you want from me? Zero Order removed his mask. This might not be a short conversation, so I thought at least we should speak face to face. His black hair, handsome face, and blazing golden eyes were revealed. He glanced at Ludger and said casually, First of all, well done. You defeated the Liberation Force, those dark mages, and even a demon. Ludger glanced at him, answering coldly. Wasn't all this part of your plan? You even used Nikolai to exploit the underground base of those black mages, right? Zero Order laughed, leaning back. Oh, Nikolai acted on his own. I had nothing to do with it. Or you knew and pretended to ignore it. Zero Order tapped his fingers on the table, smiling. True enough. But don't worry, I have more important matters to discuss. You're still carrying out the assigned task, aren't you? The task? Ludger raised an eyebrow. You said it was ordained by fate. He paused, then added, I'm certain that person is the master of the Judgment Demon Eye. Zero Order's yellow eyes flashed. He was slightly surprised. Oh? If you know that much, does that mean you found them? Not yet. But I once read an ancient document about the Demon Eye judgment used by the priestesses. Ludger stood up, his gaze grave. And in those records, There was always an entity mentioned alongside them. He stepped forward, looking directly at his opponent. Isn't it that demons come from the literary world? He paused, then said decisively, or should I call you an apostle? The atmosphere in the room immediately soured. Zero Order squinted, his voice low and tense. Did Basara tell you about us? Ludger remained calm. No, but he said you truly exist. That alone was enough for me to deduce your identity. Zero Order burst into loud laughter, covering half his face with a hand. Ha ha ha. You traced me from just that clue? Indeed, I did not mistake you. Ludger cut to the chase and asked directly, what do you want with the master of the demon eye? Do you intend to eliminate them? Zero Order curled his lips, their gazes fraught with tension. Oh, that's a secret. He hedged. We have our own affairs to attend to, but I can tell you part of the truth. We oppose the god Luminous. People call us demons, lords of calamity, bringers of chaos to the world, but we call each other apostles. Ludger recalled Basara's final words. Apostles are messengers sent by a god, so perhaps they serve another deity. Zero Order smiled and recounted. Back then at the festival, when I first saw you, I already knew. Although you are human, the way you view the world is identical to ours. Haven't you always seen this place as a cage, a prison of order and illusion? Ludger sighed, leaning back. Let me guess, you intend to recruit me to your side. He shook his head firmly. Sorry, but I'm not interested in joining those who've caused every kind of chaos. Zero Order kept his enigmatic smile, accepting Ludger's answer. Yes, I noticed that. He cast a meaningful glance. Because the path you've walked is entirely different from mine. The conversation paused in a thoughtful silence. Just as the exchange grew tense, footsteps echoed, breaking the silence. The newcomer exclaimed, Oh my God! A young girl with half-black, half-white hair and striking clothes sat on the windowsill. She curled her lip and rudely cut them off. How long are you two going to prattle on? She looked straight at Ludger. Are you the one who defeated Basara? She jumped down from the windowsill and held out her hand in a blunt introduction. Hi, I'm Helia, a new Rank 1 member. Zero Order turned reproachfully. Helia, I told you to wait outside. Helia shrugged, unfazed. I've waited long enough and you still haven't come back. Ludger glanced at her, thinking, she's a demon too. No wonder she dares stand beside Zero Order without fear. Helia looked at him curiously, then vanished, and reappeared right behind him. Interesting, she laughed. You showed no fear at all, you're even watching us. She leaned in close, lightly placing a hand over his eyes. Not bad. No wonder you could take down Basara. Ludger kept a cold gaze, undisturbed by Helia's bold approach. He glared at her. This is an illusion, isn't it? Helia laughed and withdrew her illusion. Well, how did you know? My illusions are tangible, so ordinary people are easily deceived. Zero Order interjected, trying to restore order to the conversation. Helia, enough. We were in the middle of a discussion. Helia turned back, showing no submission. Is that an order? We're equals. You have no right to command me. Zero Order glared. His blazing yellow eyes were threatening and furious as he called her name coldly, Helia. Helia clicked her tongue and sighed. Calm down. I know you're a traitor, but no need to get tense. She continued with provocation. Would you kill your own apostle just because I displease you? Ludger listened. Betrayal, you say? Zero Order sighed, his hand trembling with anger as he managed to call her name once more, Helia. He adjusted his demeanor, trying to return to the main point. Now, we don't have much time, so let's get straight to it. You realize the kingdom of Bredis is acting again, don't you? The events that occurred in the capital this time will surely force them to commit fully to intervening in Exilion. Ludger sharply grasped the situation. You know the Empire will not submit. Moreover, with the power they possess, it will be very difficult for them to seize the Empire. Zero Order smiled enigmatically. True, but the same thing has happened before. Do you know why that facility was abandoned? Before the Empire existed, there was a powerful kingdom. It was so strong that even the kingdom of Bredis dared not intervene. That kingdom did not want other nations to fall under Bredis's domination, so they cooperated with the spirits to study the world tree. However, collaborating with non-human races was considered heresy, so that kingdom had to withdraw into the shadows to avoid Bredis's attention. However, Basara, while carrying out his mission, discovered them. The kingdom fought and sealed Basara within the world tree, but the kingdom of Bredis still found out, and all the leaders of that kingdom were replaced. Zero Order tapped the chair and continued. At that time and now, Bredis still held the power to do that. Zero Order rose abruptly, projecting authority in his smart black attire, turned to leave. I personally do not want that to happen. Warn your leaders. He turned his back toward the window. One more thing. Have you changed your mind about joining me? I would be very willing if you did, Ludger answered pensively. Let me give you my answer later. Zero Order showed a hint of disappointment but kept his smile. It seems you are considering it. For now, I accept that. He glanced at Ludger, then walked over to Helia, leaving one final message. But one day you will have to choose, because our paths will cross again. Zero Order stepped out the window, his figure quickly swallowed by the night. Ludger sat there, silent in the suddenly empty room. Ludger brooded. In his mind, the facts were being stitched together. Basara and now Zero Order were both hunting Lin and the Demon Eye. Could it be that all the apostles share the same target? Could he protect the girl from all of them? He only wished for her to live an ordinary life, not be dragged into this whirlpool of chaos. A knock on the door broke his train of thought. May I come in? Ludger replied, his voice slightly hoarse. Of course, come in. The door opened ajar. Flora stepped in and moved to stand by the bedside, voice full of worry. How are you feeling, sir? Ludger sat on the bed, his gaze calm as usual. I don't think anything's wrong with me. How about you? Yes, I'm fine too, Flora replied. He nodded lightly, but his eyes lingered on her hair. Still, your hair doesn't look quite right. Flora touched the faded strands. A lock fell over her shoulder. Yes, it's faded a lot, but it hasn't returned to its original color. However, the doctors say I'm completely normal, even healthier than before. Ludger watched in silence. Remnants of Basara? The thought flickered through his mind, then he dismissed it. If the tests show nothing wrong, there's no need to dig deeper. Good, I'm glad you're not hurt. He changed his tone, more serious. But I suppose you didn't come here in the middle of the night just to check on me, did you? Flora took a small step back and bowed deeply. Thank you for saving me. Ludger looked at her, then turned away, his voice softening. I only did what needed to be done. We're both safe, so don't worry about it. She pouted. I'm sincerely thanking you. What's wrong with accepting my thanks? Without waiting for a reply, she sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a careful distance. May I sit? Ludger closed his eyes, a moment of helplessness passing over his tired face. Sit first, then ask, right? She whispered softly. Professor. The room fell silent. Only the wind at the window could be heard. Flora hesitated. Sir, could you tell me about your relationship with the girl named Lin? Ludger answered slowly, his gaze fixed ahead. That's personal, so I can't go into details for you. He paused briefly, then continued in a lower voice. Let's say it wasn't a healthy relationship. Some things happened in the past. Flora listened in silence, glancing at him lightly. Ludger, resigned, changed the subject, and returned to his role as teacher. Flora, do you remember the magic I told you to observe closely? Flora startled at the sudden question. Oh, the magic in my dream. Or wherever it was. I've never heard of any magic like that before. That's because you weren't supposed to. Ludger replied slowly. Because I created it. Flora was surprised. What? You? Created it yourself? He nodded. The kind of magic I use isn't affected by circles. It relies on belief in magic, on a mind brave enough to pursue the mysterious, and the will to make it real. His voice softened, as if lecturing in class. Those elements are the foundation of true magic. Ludger braced himself and stood, asking, So why do you think I told you to observe me carefully? Flora blinked, confused. She hadn't expected a visit to an ill teacher to turn into a lesson, and she murmured, What? He continued, Because you have the talent to use it. Flora looked up. Their eyes met. You have the capability, Ludger said, his tone serious but full of trust, to grasp it simply by watching. All that's left is to see how you'll use it. Strive for it with everything you have. A lesson and also a charge. Perhaps that was where the class ended. On the quiet streets of Lindeburn, moonlight spread over the pale stone. Zero Order walked ahead. Helia followed at a leisurely pace. Helia grumbled, Damn, I wanted to talk to him longer. He's quite an interesting person. Zero didn't turn his head, his voice cool. I've told you, Helia. We'd better leave before that thing notices us. Helia pouted, still unwilling to stop. Ugh, but we should get a little fun. Their steps suddenly faltered. Ahead, a figure appeared in the moonlight. Zero narrowed his eyes. Oh, look who it is. She actually came. Grandair, still with that chillingly saintly air, stood in their way and spoke sarcastically. Out for a moonlit stroll? She glanced over the two of them and smiled thinly. It's rare to see you two together like this. I haven't been touring long, and the first thing I see already annoys me. Zero replied casually. I figured you might feel that way, so we tried to avoid your path. But you came to us, does that mean you want to fight? Grandair broke into an excited smile as pale violet magic swirled around her. A fight? I can do that. Helia laughed loudly, thrilled. Ahaha, wonderful. You think that just because I ran off last time, that this time I'll be an easy target. She transformed into a fiend. Dozens of spectral beasts surrounded her, countless blazing golden eyes flashing. Wait, you two. Zero Order spoke, his voice low but steady. I have no intention of fighting. Grandere narrowed her eyes in displeasure. She exhaled sharply, a neat way to extinguish the flame. You're still different from the other apostles. Zero smiled faintly. You wear the title, Agent of God, yet you've never sought God. Neither of us are normal, are we? You corpse that longs for death? Helia, flustered, whispered, Huh? We're really not fighting? As if in the old days they'd just rush in and batter each other. Gronder turned her back and walked away, issuing a warning. Don't linger here. You'd best disappear before I change my mind. She paused and looked up at the night sky, her voice smaller. It seems you have found it. Then she turned back and added, For now, I've merely postponed my path. What about you? Have you found what you need? Zero Order smirked, half a smile, half a challenge. I've found a trace. It won't be long. Then good. Grandere replied softly and walked away. Keep your oath. Her footsteps receded into the night. Helia sighed in frustration. That's not fair. You two have a secret conversation and I just stand here watching. Zero smiled, eyes hidden behind his mask. Everyone has secrets, Helia. Grandeur walked alone along the paved road, twirling the umbrella in her hand in boredom. Oh dear, I meant to visit a pupil to tease them a bit, but it seems today isn't the right day. Well, I'll just go tease someone else. Hans, who was applying a cold compress to the person on the bed, suddenly shivered. What's this? I just got goosebumps. He glanced around, then muttered, Must be an illusion. Bellaluna still lies there, breathing faintly. Hans scowled. Good heavens, did you overwork yourself into bedrest? You always lock yourself in your room, so your stamina was bad to begin with. The next morning, at De Valk Palace, inside the Gilded Hall, Ludger glanced at the person sitting beside him and saw him trembling uncontrollably. Professor Chris, that elf Chris interrupted solemnly. Lady Bellaluna. Ludger, helpless. Well then, Lady Bellaluna, she's likely awakened in a safe place, he reassured. There's no need to worry too much. However, after hearing this, Chris shouted, How do you know she wasn't taken by the bad guys while we were unconscious? Lady Bellaluna is a frail and delicate woman. Ludger looked at Chris and thought silently. That frail woman is a notorious rogue doctor in the back alleys. Ludger watched Professor Chris frown, nervously sitting beside him. Well, I sent Bellaluna to a hideout, so of course she won't be there when you wake up. But still, is that something to be so worried about? Seeing this, he helplessly reassured him. But if you're truly that worried, I'll ask His Majesty when I meet him. Stay calm until the medal ceremony is over. Chris huffed, then exhaled. All right, thanks. Immediately after, the royal guards entered and announced solemnly, Ladies and gentlemen, all preparations are complete. Please proceed. In the brightly lit auditorium, Emperor Ovistas von Exilion stood on the podium, his voice resonant. Yesterday, in the operation to eliminate the terrorist group against the capital Lindebrunn, you all acted bravely. Therefore, I, Emperor Ovistas von Exilion, bestow this medal to acknowledge your contributions. Ludger listened, each word engraving itself in his mind. This incident was concluded to have been primarily the work of Phasius and Terina, a proclamation more political than truthful. Of course, it was a way to cover up the apostles' appearance from the public. Only a few had witnessed the apostles firsthand, and it was best that they keep it quiet. As for Mandalina, she's more meticulous about these matters than I thought, so there should be no problem. Oh, now that I think about it, Casey Selmore was there too. I heard she refused the medal and went straight back to Retterbelk. Phacius said she looked rather unwell. Perhaps I should visit her soon. Ludger remained standing, his mind calm amid those thoughts. The Emperor approached and gently pinned the medal to his chest. He cast a quick glance around the hall, the glare of lights reflecting off countless uniforms. In any case, people seemed very engaged with the ceremony. Even some members of the royal family were present. His gaze stopped at the front row. That must be the second Prince Evelon von Exilion, standing between Eilen and Arendir. I heard he renounced his place in the line of succession, with no power and no ambition. Suddenly, their eyes met. Ludger paused slightly. Applause rose as the ceremony continued, but his mind remained fixed on that moment. That look just now was not the gaze one typically sees from the second prince. Just a moment, composed on the surface, but beneath it, something entirely different. Ludger tightened his hand slightly, his eyes narrowing. So he was deliberately hiding himself. Evelyn von Exilian, the seemingly ordinary prince, conceals a secret larger than we imagined.